And then they do new rules, which I was disappointed. New rules are way bigger now. New rules are a much bigger part of the show. This was just like 3 quick ones. It was funny. So there's another Joe Millionaire reference in New Rules. This guy is fucking obsessed with Joe Millionaire. He's doing Joe Millionaire jokes like 9 months ago, and he's still doing Joe Millionaire jokes. Comes back, he's like, I'm on HBO. I can do whatever I want. I have freedom to live finally. Here's more Joe Millionaire jokes.
Here's my target, Joe Millionaire.
Yes, as if everybody at home was like, no, Bill, not Joe Millionaire.
Stop it. This guy is crossing the line here.
And then I believe he ends New Rules with a joke about how women can't drive. Another group of people can't drive joke. And it's, look, going back to that mindset, it's so funny. I drove a lot for work for a long time. And like, obviously LA traffic, people only talk about traffic. Listen, if you had to deal with this traffic, you'd talk about it all the time too. It's like if a guy was chasing you with a knife trying to kill you, it'd be like other people being like, oh, he's always talking about the guy with a knife chasing you, trying to kill him. Yeah, like, of course I am. It's a fucking insane thing to endure. I got bad road rage while I was doing it. It's better now. I got into like yelling confrontations with other people. And I'm bringing this all up to say it's so funny that all these jokes about like this group can't drive and this group can't drive. It's so funny and insane to me to think of someone being like, you know who can drive? White men.
Yeah, they're just weird obsessions. The other thing, I mean, I've been watching the Mulaney Netflix thing, and there is a lot of hanging up on people on the phone. Like, that seems to be a bit where, but not purposefully. It's just like that, almost like, hey, we should have a thing where people call in, and then it doesn't immediately lead to a classic witty back and forth. And so it's like, okay, bye. Sorry. And Bill does this a lot. And I think it's like that false sense of confidence where you're like, this is going to be hilarious. I'm going to get this wacko on here and I'm going to cut them down to size and make some hilarious thing. And then they just immediately lose their confidence. But in the scheme of things, they're like, yeah, no, this will be interactive.
Then they go to New Rules. And I do want to know, have you ever seen a New Rules before?
No. And to be quite honest, I paid almost no attention to it.
New Rules currently as they stand, like now and for a long time, it's like new rule joke, new rule joke, new rule joke, new rule joke that then leads into the long monologue. These are still just like quick jokes. So the first one is complaining about how many Grammys Norah Jones won.
Oh, yeah, right.
And there's no real joke. He's just like, enough Grammys for Norah Jones.
Yeah, we get it. We get it. I'm sure Norah Jones's music is good. We get it.
The next joke is about the federal government cracking down on like head shops, which were like, I guess, weed shops back then.
Yeah, yeah.
And during it, he's like, oh, we've got all these foreign villains to worry about. But I guess now you thought it was important to deal with the axis of Coolio. And I rewound it multiple times to make sure he said Coolio, because I was like, look, this was 21 years ago. Maybe this is some slang I'm not picking up. I'm positive he said Coolio.
Oh, yeah, he said Coolio. Yeah.
Why Coolio? Do you remember Coolio being like the weed smoking guy? And I know they already referenced Tommy Chong during the opening monologue.
Yes, which was also very bad.
Like Coolio, like you couldn't go with Snoop Dogg. It's not like Coolio sounds like evil, so it's like, oh, it's a pun on axis of evil.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was trying to figure out. I was like, does he think that Coolio sounds close to evil? That was the only thing I could think of in the moment.
I looked it up. Gangsta's Paradise, 1995. So 8 years.
Yeah, Coolio was not famous for very long after Gangsta's Paradise. Like, obviously, the public consciousness is aware of Coolio, but it's not.
Yeah, and once again, Snoop Dogg is right there. I couldn't get over. Hey, you know, we all think about weed smoking. You think about Coolio. Like, I'm sure they were just like, yeah, he's a rapper.
Oh, for sure. That's what it was. Yeah.
That's the joke. I referenced all the way back at the start when you were talking about he knows they're going to applaud. They don't applaud for the end of that joke, which is essentially something like, we've got bigger problems.
If we're buying duct tape, then cops shouldn't have time for potheads. I can't believe only 20% of the crowd thinks that's a good thing.
He gets sincerely pissed off at them for not applauding.
Such a weird way to do comedy, where you just expect every single time you say anything, people will clap.
And then at the end, he does the exact same Robert Blake joke that literally every other comedian in America was doing. Okay, so I'm assuming no other thoughts on New Rules if you just glazed over it for them.
No, I just was trying to remember. At some point, they were talking about SUVs.
Oh, yeah, Ford Explorer and Ford, it doesn't make you an outdoorsman if it's named a Navigator.
Yeah, and then he's like, it should just be called a giant Ford fuck you mobile. And I was like, what a great joke there. Explorer, Navigator, you're not going out in the woods. You're just taking your kids to soccer. They might as well just call it the fuck you mobile.
Yeah, and why is it a fuck you mobile?
It makes no sense. It's genuinely like a joke you would hear like a 55-year-old man doing at an open mic for the first time he's ever done comedy.
Yeah, and this is his Ford fuck you mobile. Why? What about it is saying fuck you to me? New rules are long. New rules are like the thing from this show. Like if somebody wants to make fun of real time, they go, new rule. That's like the iconic thing about it. This one is so, it's like now it's still very short in the beginning. And usually it's like new rule, which is a joke, new rule, which is a joke, new rule, which is a joke, new rule. That's a joke that then leads into like his long monologue about one specific topic. Nothing, like no jokes, new rules. It's literally a thing where he's like, new rule, this is annoying. New rule, I don't like this. And you're like, these don't even have the hint of a joke. It's just a thing you're saying your audience is going to be like, woo, and then like applaud.
Yeah, I have nothing to say on it because it was so immemorable.
Yeah.
Like it was just like,
Dude.
I was so done by then too.
I'm kind of on board with
So
him.
my conspiracy now is, and I understand it's just how people talk back then, but listening to when he's like, turns you on, hey, Bill. I'm like, I don't think Denis Miller has sex. I don't think he's had sex. I don't think he has sex. He's just like such a non-sexual entity here. I believe Bill Maher is horny and disgusting. I don't believe that about Denis Miller. So then we get into, was there anything else you wanted to say about the question period?
No, I just agree with you that Denis Miller is asexual.
Yes. Okay, great. New rule. If you're gonna make reference to your two co-panelists having sex, try having had sex yourself. So then we do go into new rules. That was perfect. I don't have a ton to say about new rules, which again are like almost all premises.
They're just not good.
The one thing I'll say is he goes, now it's time for new rules. Everybody cheers. And then he goes, new rule.
No gay fraternities.
And I was just like, oh my God. Wow. Starting off with a fucking banger this week.
Honestly, honestly, there were moments like that where I was like, this is so ultimately funny, in the same way that to me, Donald Trump, I think, is incredibly funny, and he's not funny because he's such a threat, and I get that. Nobody misunderstand me, but he says things that I'm like, yeah, that's hilarious.
The late great Hannibal Lecter. If I get dementia, I will hold on to that longer than I will the names of my family members. I don't know how that could
When
ever
he
be.
asked that kid about believing in Santa, he's like, that's kind of marginal, isn't it? And I was like, honestly, hilarious.
Yeah, what are you, 7? Yeah, believing still, that's
marginal. But also, like, his nicknames for people are funny. Calling people rats is hilarious. Like, ultimately, he does make me laugh, and I don't want him to. I think he's an evil being, but someone just coming out and saying no more gay fraternities is so, like, it's so beyond on the nose. It doesn't, it's like another thing. Like, it just, what?
Yeah, it's homophobic. It's homophobic in that way where it's like, we're now at like a place in the culture where like, you'll just laugh at it. It's so homophobic that it's like, this isn't even insidious. It's just insane.
Exactly. Exactly.
And he's so proud of himself. The part when he goes, it's something like you don't need to be a fucking asshole if you're fucking assholes. And like the crowd loves it. They love it.
Love.
And it's just like a series of gay jokes where you're like, okay, but like, what is your problem with a gay fraternity? Like, okay, haha, the jokes are over. The new rules are things he believes. I've never seen him do one ironically. So like, now is the rare time where I actually want you to articulate why you believe this. Because what could your problem with gay? You don't even go to college. You're not even in.
That is exactly what I kept coming back to as I watched him like repeat himself. I'm like, this isn't a problem for you because you're not there. It's insane. It's like you like I don't even have like an equivalent. It's like me being like, I don't want them to do something in Montana. Not a okay, no big deal, girlfriend. You're not there.
Yeah, like
It doesn't matter. Like, okay. Why are you spending any time on a college campus, even as
well,
a
we know why
touring
he'd
comedian?
be on a
I
college
know,
campus. We know what he'd be
but
looking
then
for.
also, why are you worried about fraternities? Because why? Like maybe you would be worried about sororities because you're a creep and a sicko, but like a fraternity has nothing to do with you. Go away.
Yeah,
Go away.
it's like, yeah, he already is one of those things where it's like, you don't need a gay fraternity because fraternities are already gay. And it's like, okay, then like, what
Okay.
are you talking about then? Like,
But also, that's one of the only good parts of a fraternity is the vague homoeroticness.
I mean, vague. I think you're being a little, a little, I don't know, vague.
Generous with my.
Yeah, I guess generous. I couldn't even think of the right term. I think you're being a little delusional, I think is what I would go with calling fraternities.
Every single frat guy I knew had sucked someone off or been sucked off by a guy. And that's just what's happening. And that's fine. That's when you get enough med together, you get a quorum and you guys start blowing each other. That's fine. And I don't know if that's what he's afraid of. I don't know. But I was like, this just doesn't concern you.
It's a real belief of mine that the straightest thing two men can do is get drunk and come as close as humanly possible to having sex with each other without doing it. Like that's what
so straight.
That's what being close male friends is. This is so good. This is really, a lot of this has been dull up to this, but this is that fucking good shit I was waiting for. He goes into New Rules, which is like Oops All Oscars edition. He gets annoyed that nobody claps when he...
It's surreal.
He's just a huge baby. He's such a baby.
Did you notice the other thing that he did that I loved?
No.
A punchline didn't get as much as he wanted, and so he delivers it again very quickly with more oomph.
Oh, yes. So it starts with go back to calling actresses and not actors. And it feels very much like no gay fraternities. And that you're just like, how could you possibly care? It's that thing, like watching a comic where they're always upset on stage. And like, I'm one of those guys. I have a lot of energy, a lot of volume. But I like to think the things I talk about, people are like, oh yeah, like he's justified why he is delivering this with such like, so much like energy and vigor. Whereas like some comics you watch and they're doing that tone, but they're talking about like, the line at the post office. And you're just like, where is this passion meant to come from that the post office will have a long line? Or like, people are like, I've seen it. A lot of people do the like, people are so fat these days. And it's just like, why would you possibly care? I mean, that's actually a question you could ask Bill Maher. And this is a classic example of like, go back to calling actresses and not actors. And you just go, why? Who gives a fuck? Also, the word is not gendered. You're getting upset with the English language right now. This is not some sort of weird meaning that we've forced onto it. It's always been the word can just mean an actor who acts in anything as opposed to man who acts.
Because I think I'm crazy because of all the culture war stuff that happens now. People act like, oh, it's a new thing. It's like, it's been like this for my entire fucking life. I remember a radio station in my hometown had a poll over whether or not they should play Heart because women aren't really rock and roll.
Do you remember when people would complain about being asked if you want fries with that at the drive-thru? And it was the whole thing of like, if I wanted fries, I'd ask for fries.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was a real, this is a real solution looking for a problem.
Yes. Or like my big thing, the dial 1 for English and it's the thing like, this is America. Why do I have to dial 1? And it's like, you're getting angry at a business for trying to better serve its customers. Also, it's like, it's you're number one. In this example, the language you're so upset isn't getting the special treatment it's getting slotted in first. You don't have to hear anything else. You just quickly press one button. And at this point, you press the button as soon as you start to hear for English, you just hit 1 before they're even done. But that was like a talking point during elections. It was on CNN. They would complain about it. It's like that's like this. It's like, who gives a shit?
It was especially also the dial 1 for English, especially in Canada in the 90s and 2000s, because there was such an unnecessary animus between French Canadians and English Canadians that people literally were shitting themselves. Like, What do you mean the two official languages of this country are being recognized in all parts of this country? What do you mean? Because of economic circumstances, French Canadians are moving around because we agree that their language is part of our national culture. We actually have to include it in other cities that are walking distance from French Canada. And it's like, well, they don't do it the other side. And it's like, yeah, that's right. They don't. And that's shitty. But that's not a reason for us not to do it.
It's like here when people use like disability access as an excuse to punish the unhoused, where they'll be like, oh, they're cluttering the streets. Somebody in a wheelchair couldn't get around. And you're just like, I've never heard you make this complaint in any case except to use it against a group of people you don't like. And it'd be the same thing when people be like, oh, well, you know, in Quebec, they treat other languages so poorly. They like Montreal destroyed its own Chinatown. It's like, yeah, that's true, but you don't care. You don't actually care about that. You're just looking for an excuse not to do this thing.
It is something I've been saying about the whole trans debate when it comes to sports.
Oh my God.
Is that I'm not even researching it. Figure it out or we cancel all sports. Well, that's reductive. It's not my fucking problem. Like you guys invented a thing because none of you can attack gay people anymore. And I figured out a way to make you shut up. You don't get to be upset. Like, okay, here are the two things. Figure it out or cancel all sports. It's so easy. Shut up.
Dude. And yeah. And the idea that any of these people, it's like, oh, they're destroying women's sports. And it's like, name a woman who plays a sport. I bet you can't do it.
You've never mentioned swimming once, motherfucker.
Yes. Oh, fuck yeah. God, the swimming.
Who's your favorite swimming host on ESPN? Oh, I made a afternoon gathering in a park in London where I was going through some stuff. I made it very uncomfortable because I was so indignant and I stood by where he was like, well, I'm like, we're not having a conversation. Your two plans are present me a solution or all sports are canceled. Mm-hmm. That's the frame of this debate. And what I enjoy is people don't understand. This is not a time for you to tell me your opinion. And I sit here quietly and look at my friends. And after you leave, we go, well, he likes a little bit too much of that podcast. No. I'm better at being an asshole. Here's how you be an asshole on this topic.
They do. Oh, so this is where, and I don't think it's a good joke. That's the qualifier, I'll say. But the new rule, which is every Oscar ceremony, take back an Oscar. When he did that, I was like, okay.
I got to tell you,
I was like,
that was my one joke where I went, this could be a funny joke. When he said that, I was like, I don't know where you're going, but this is a great premise.
Yeah, I was like, this is a comedic premise. Oh my God. Like they stumbled on a comedic premise as opposed to a news event that then they're like, and Jessica Alba's hot, right? And then the crowd like applauds. This starting off, I was like, wow, a comic premise. And it stunk what they did because they just sort of reiterated the premise as the punchline. Nevertheless, I was like, okay, kudos where it's deserved.
I even thought what they were going to do was take back Roman Polanski's Oscar. And I insulted myself because I was like, why would you think that they would put that much thought into a reasonable callback? And I was like, because
And he loves callbacks. We've seen him love callbacks in the past. And then the last one was new rule. Ads for the pianist should say pianist and not pianist. We all know it sounds like penis. But then it like goes on this journey to the ending point is him saying, or they could do it the old-fashioned way and just fuck Fred Durst. And I remember being like, the end of this journey, we went like A, B, H, and then it ended. We skipped so many steps to get to that conclusion of this sort of like somewhat longer joke that I was like, and as well, I was like, I also don't know. I remember like I liked nu metal. There were rumors about like, you know, a couple people fucking Fred Durst, but like, it's not like it was like, oh, Fred Durst. He's like a famous coos hound with all these young starlets.
Here's what I think it was, is Christina Aguilera and Fred Durst famously fucked. And I guarantee that Bill Maher saw Christina Aguilera at some horrific club like the Roxbury in LA in 2002. Mm-hmm. She didn't speak to him because, bear in mind, she's a person in her 20s and Bill Maher is 47. Yeah. And then he was like, Fred Durst getting some of my stock of puss. Also, I rewatched the joke because I couldn't figure out how we got from penis to that. And I still do not know.
Yeah, it's absolutely inscrutable.
Speaking of inscrutable, though, I find what happens coming up next to be one of the most insane, clunky transitions in the history of television.
Yeah. So, and then the last one is stop giving. Oh, so the last one is stop giving Oscars to movies that are too long. And it's just like, okay, I just don't really. I don't have a problem with like Two Towers is not one of those movies where people are like, should have been shorter. I'm assuming you were going to go to. You're talking about the song, is what's insane.
Yeah, I forgot about the weird long movies rant, which was I actually remember was a very specific time of 2003, 2004, and it was just because the Lord of the Rings movies were long. It was a de rigueur thing about all the Oscars.
Yeah, all of these questions that get raised, and then they're just like, oh, no time, and it's like, well, but you finally got to something worth having a conversation about. And then you're just going to skip off of it so that we can go to new rules. I mean, when you have something as good as new rules, you got to abandon all the good questions.
But we got to hurry through the new rules on this one to get to the real meat.
It's just like, oh, you can hear Michael Graham laughing in the background. It's like making me suicidal. He calls Tony Blair gay during one of the new rules.
Right. Always let Tony Blair do the talking for you.
Yes, because he's
Those British people sound gay.
Yeah. French people also have been accused of sounding gay earlier, so it's just Europe is gay, I suppose. Here,
Gay Paris.
Right.
Take that out.
I was lying. I don't edit any of this. I'm going to leave in all the
God
pauses
damn
where we had
it!
to go deal with our pets being loud.
Ugh.
I'll say this: you missed new rules, Lindsay, by not watching.
Oh.
You missed new rules. He opens new rules by going, "This is my favorite part of the show," and then he proceeds to do probably the worst new rules we've seen so far. They're really, really, really bad.
Really, really bad?
In fact, at the end of one of them, he goes,
Some of these are just obvious.
Oh.
which is like, I was just talking with some comics the other night about, I saw a comic, he was doing jokes, and then he was just like, I mean, you guys get it. And it's just like, wow, way to stand behind your jokes. To just be like, you know where I'm going. These write themselves. you just think it's some more on your own if you want to.
And then we get new rule. The worst part of new rules is always hearing. There's always one panelist you can hear laughing the hardest. This time it's Michael Eric Dyson. Michael Graham might be the worst laugher. The new rules this week are, a couple of them are insane.
I didn't even take notes. They were so boring.
Yeah, so he doesn't. Apparently, he doesn't start closing with like the monologue at the end until like season 8, and they're so short. And this one, the first new rule is essentially like, it's like new rule. We should put Saddam Hussein's head on a spike in the middle of Baghdad. That's his new rule, instead of draping flags.
When we find him.
Yeah, yes.
Because again, they still don't have him.
Second is stop congressional sing-alongs. Third one, this one was baffling.
The third one is SARS is not a scary enough name.
Yes. So, scary diseases should have scary names. And one thing, so before you get to what you're going to say about this, I'll say last week he said what the acronym stood for and was like, that's terrifying. That's serious. I swear to God, 1 week ago, he was talking about how scary the full name of SARS is. And then this week, he's like, SARS, who cares?
And he's like, we should call it something like Shanghai Surprise.
Oh, yes.
So once again, he can't help it. Like his only redoubt is to be casually racist. Yeah. If he actually has to make a joke.
But the other thing that's insane, too, is he doesn't just say SARS. He's like SARS, pox, bubonic plague. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't think those words are scary?
No, I think he's saying pox is scary. Bubonic plague is scary.
I couldn't tell because he was delivering it all with the same tone. And I was like, is he saying it's not scary like those?
He can't tell a joke. That may as well have been, whatever that Ron Burgundy thing was, fuck yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
San Diego or whatever.
Yes,
he was just reading it without any tone.
Yeah. I also have the note, he just wanted to be racist. And then the fourth new rule is, it was president's work weekends because Joe Lieberman asked them was like, we have to do the debate after sundown on the Sabbath because I can't work. And listen, I hate to say this. It's like when he's saying that, I was like, that is just the kind of thing that should be a rule. Like if the Sabbath will prevent you from being president for the entirety of Saturday, it does like perhaps bring up a problem. But then he closes with the punchline about something like, what's next? We can't do it on a full moon because Dick Gerhardt is a werewolf?
Yeah, I mean, that at least was a joke. It wasn't good.
What does it?
But it was a joke.
It's not. Is it again just another thing? It's just like
it's just a non sequitur about. No, that's it. It's just a non sequitur joke. You keep trying to read into it like he's got some insight, but I guess because it's a 20-year-old show, you're trying to tie it to something. But no, he was just making a joke. But I don't like, I did not. And like, this is just, you can put parentheses around my voice for this if you want. But like, as a Jew who is not at all religious and doesn't actually think any of this matters, the idea that you would be like, because first of all, it wasn't being president, right?
Sure.
Like, I think Joe Lieberman is not being like, we can't talk about war on a Saturday. It was about scheduling the vice presidential debate. So tell me something less significant that there should be a new rule about.
Was this the VP one, or were they still? I think this might have still been during the primary before they picked VPs.
Oh, I guess it could have been.
Either way, it's not like those debates are so.
Debate.
I will also say though,
who cares?
I will say that is the only thing I find disqualifying about Joe Lieberman as president. I do want to include that detail. Otherwise,
Otherwise, he's gangbusters. Sure.
I did not know. I did not know he was Orthodox.
Yeah.
And then they go to he's not Orthodox now. And then they go to, he is dead, right? I am correct.
The former United States Senator Joseph Lieberman died this afternoon, March 27th, 2024, in New York City.
So then they go to Jerry Minor.
He's dead to me.
Sure. Yeah. Ever since our big blow up about the VP debate, I just haven't been able to speak to him. So, and then they do new rules. Do you have any thoughts on
New
new rules?
Rule? Yeah, that was a segment I was familiar with somehow. I must have seen it.
Well, and people have been making I feel like people have made jokes for so long where they'll just be like, hey, there's a new rule. You have to use a coaster in here. New rule. Use a coaster if your drink's going to be sweating like it's the fourth inning of the NBA Finals. So the new rule's the first one. New rule, Monica Lewinsky doesn't get a TV show.
It's amazing how even after 25 years, even hearing the name Monica Lewinsky just gave me like hack joke fatigue, and just like my whole body just kind of slumped like, oh God, I just never want to hear another one of those jokes for the rest of my fucking life.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, my man, you have a TV show. Why can't Monica Lewinsky have a TV show? What have you done of more significance?
There was another Monica Lewinsky joke. I think Denis Miller snuck it in where he was like, better than a president getting a blowjob from an intern or something. It was
was the praying.
Yeah, what a crime. What a crime.
Oh, and this is the one where the punchline, he fucking eats shit. I mean, again, it's not really a punchline. These are not really jokes, most of the new rules. And he delivers it poorly, and it's bad. And then after it tanks, he goes, they're sensitive tonight. Like, they're sensitive tonight. That must be what it is, why the crowd isn't laughing at earlier my reference to a woman being horrifically murdered by her spouse, and now me making a joke about a thing that happened, even at that point, 7 years ago, that everybody made every single joke you could possibly make about it. The second one is Rodney, he goes, new rule, Rodney King must stop driving.
Yeah.
And then the punchline is he was like...
And now Rodney has driven his car into a house. In his defense, he saw looting on TV and thought it was his cue.
Is that the thing Rodney King is famous for in this guy's mind? Like, being a part of the LA riots? Because in my brain, the thing everybody knows Rodney King from is getting nearly beaten to death by the LAPD in one of the most horrific acts of police violence. Like the first, seemingly the first truly horrific one put on television.
Uproar of people where, there was rioting and looting as part of that expression of outrage. Absolutely. But if that's what you equate Rodney King.
Dude, baffling as to what the joke means.
So, exactly. It was like, and it just like, what a target for a joke. This guy who got beaten within an inch of his life by a bunch of cops, and Bill Maher's like, take that guy's license away, and Denis Miller's like, well, I haven't seen a guy get beat like that since Tsar Nicholas III in the 1496. What? Shut the fuck up.
it's like, yeah, oh, geez, take that guy's license away. He's drunk all the time. It's almost as if he's trying to self-medicate after a horrifically traumatic event that he never managed to get over in his entire life. So, and then there's the third new rule. And now this taps into a special feature that comes up almost every single episode. I like to call this Marsogeny.
Cringe. There's no other word for it. This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
The last new rule is you must be at least as hot as Laura Logan to report the news. No laughs. Dead silence to that one. No woos. The whole crowd is like, what the fuck? And then it kind of goes into a thing where he's like, if news these days is just standing in front of a thing and being like, oh, look at this without any insight, you might as well have to be hot while you do it. And it's like, I would not include that joke, Marsogeny, if it weren't for the fact that he clearly is just talking about women. He's only talking about women who report the news. He also ends it with something about like finding out what Arnold Schwarzenegger is doing to Maria Shriver.
Yeah, I didn't even understand that reference.
I tried to look it up. I didn't know
if it was like domestic violence or
like, I don't think he did any of that stuff at that point. That was all like early in his career, was all the like misconduct with women.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't get that joke, and I also didn't get the Laura Logan or whatever. I have no idea who that even is. So
right, Laura Logan she's the reporter who, and I mean, this joke was way before this. This happened in like 2011, but who was like horrifically like gang assaulted by a group of men in Egypt that she's talked about. So like, it's like, it's not a commentary. It's not like a criticism of this. I mean, it is, but not this specifically of like, it's the kind of thing too, like now being reminded about Laura Logan. It's like, well, now the joke is like even more repulsive to me. Now the joke really makes my skin crawl knowing what happened to her later. Oh, right. And she became a COVID-19 conspiracy person and tweeted out an Antifa riot instruction manual picture that was fake. Boy, the journeys people go on in their careers. Fucking insane.
What's cool is that when big events happen, people's minds melt, and that seems to be a constant. We see it with Denis Miller. Bad things happen in the world. It's time to melt your brain down into applesauce.
Yeah, boy. And then, there's actually a fourth one, which is just new rule. You don't get to do a farewell tour unless you swear you'll go away. And this to me is a classic category of new rule, which is who cares?
Yeah.
Like
a joke for no one. It's like, who are you talking about? Who cares?
And it also is like, I've heard people make that joke about, he mentioned Cher, but like nobody was mad when Michael Jordan came back. Like his comeback was disappointing the second, but like everybody was really fucking excited to have Michael Jordan come back again. Like that's a cool thing to have happen. And Jordan is the main picture in this new rule. And then, it like that one flops. Dude, so I never talk about.
I don't want to sidetrack your show, but
go.
I love a quote. Going back to Laura Logan, she didn't just get on the anti-vax train. She went on the Insanity Express. Here you go. In October 2022, Logan was banned from the right-wing television network Newsmax for what the network described as reprehensible statements during an interview where she said that the open United States-Mexico border is Satan's way of taking control of the world through all of these people who are his stooges and his servants. The ones who want us eating insects, cockroaches, and that while they dine on the blood of children. Logan also told an audience that she had come to believe that Pizzagate is all true. So,
yeah, that's truly that's true madness. You gotta say something really bad to get banned from Newsmax. I did not know anyone had been banned.
They're
from
like,
Newsmax.
That's really fucked up.
Boy, yeah, that's a rough trajectory. Then we go to New Rules. Did you watch New Rules? You had to watch New Rules.
Surely I watched New Rules.
Everybody loves New Rules.
New Rules. That's my impression.
New rule, high-profile murderers have to try harder. Hack premise, the joke bombs.
Yeah.
Was there any? Well, before did any of them stick out to you before I?
No.
Sorry if I'm rushing now. My wife needs the car.
I remember that though. Go on.
Yeah. The next one was no reality movies. I saw The Real Cancun in theaters. I went to go see it with my girlfriend at the time. What he's not factoring in is a lot of people went to go see it because it was advertised as being way hornier than it actually was. And he takes a shot at Woody Allen at the end.
I did not. Wait, well, what was it?
He's like,
don't make them dull and insufferable. That's Woody Allen's job.
Interesting. Interesting take.
That's maybe the most I've ever agreed with him. I'm not a Woody Allen guy ever.
I problematically love Annie Hall.
Oh, sure. Whatever. The most the most age appropriate of all of them.
But it's like, I wouldn't. Anyway, go on.
When people love Manhattan, they should go to jail.
That's true.
New rule, Newt Gingrich must not be allowed to make a comeback. He ends it by calling Monica Lewinsky a fat-ass 90s footnote.
Wait, he did?
He goes,
if we wanted to hear from a fat-ass 90s footnote, we'd switch on Fox and watch Monica.
This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
Oh my God, I didn't even catch that at all. I clearly was just not paying attention.
Dude, this is how it always ends with the guest. I'm still bright and bushy-eyed through the whole thing. And the last one, he goes, this one's because I'm staying in a hotel. I'm going to be living out of a hotel room soon. He goes, new rule, room service personnel must know the soup.
I did catch this one.
This one's crazy. This is the most out-of-touch shit I've ever heard in my life.
It was so Karen-y. It was so... And the audience was like, just sort of quiet.
Dead. A few people nervously chuckle because they're like, what the fuck is this? I've heard what the fuck is this nervous chuckling. That's what this got. Because they were like, is he really? Being like, new rule. You better know everything on the menu if you work in room service. If you're going to charge me $28 for 2 eggs and toast.
Are you a king?
Yeah, dude.
What is this? What is this?
To end the Then we go to new rules. So so new rules. Listen, that piece of shit John Hastings lied to me. He told me that the full essay-length final new rule didn't come for like 8 years. It's here. It's here in America now. We're staring it in the face, and we just have to fucking live with it. It's like these goddamn Argentine ants that come every summer and invade a third of the apartments in Los Angeles because they want to eat your dog food or drink the water in your bathtub. They're here, and we can't do anything about it. I'll go through them first. Any new rules that really stuck out to you?
The one that I have written down is, new rule, Pat Robertson is insane. And you're like, that's not a rule. That's not actionable in any way. Like, if he had phrased it as like, new rule, let's just admit Pat Robertson. It's new rule, Pat Robertson is insane.
Yeah, just imagining like a ref throwing up like a yellow flag, and it's like, Pat Robertson insane, penalty, 5 yards. Well, the first one before that is just as stupid, because you're right. And the one before that is Woody Allen movies suck. Yeah. Like, again, it's not even phrased like, no more pretending Woody Allen can make a good movie. Yeah, it's just new rule, Woody Allen sucks. Okay. Also, he defended Woody Allen in 2024. So he's not a fan of the movies, but...
Big fan of his personal life.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that one. Pat Robertson is insane. The other thing, too, about new rules is like... We'll get to it. I'll wait for the last one. 3 is get the Ashton Kutcher Demi Moore breakup over with now. Okay, the crowd cheers.
Don't expect me to care about this later. And it's like, you're the one talking about it.
Oh my God, that whole thing of being like, I wrote a whole joke about this thing I don't care about. And it's like, really? Why?
Why?
That was a big thing I was always told in my comedy school, is they were always like, nobody wants to hear the punchline, who cares? Like, that's not a punchline anybody likes. Same way in improv, the game can never be guy who's bad at a thing. 4 is just no do-overs. And then he does a long monologue about Gray Davis being impeached. I remember living in Toronto in like 2005, and Governor and Schwarzenegger as governor coming to visit to do like a fact-finding mission, and watching the news with my roommate and them having a clip of Schwarzenegger in like a grocery store just saying, I love these delicious California grapes, and just going, I would be humiliated if this man were my governor.
It was a rough time. It was a rough time to be here. I was in college during the Great Avis recall, and my aunt had given me all of these like vintage like pins that she had from like the 60s, and one of them said Batman for governor. And all of a sudden, everyone was like, "Where the fuck did you get that? That's so cool!" Because it's like Mr. Freeze is running for governor now.
Yeah,
like
ice to represent you. Yeah, I remember him. I got here right for the tail end of it, and I remember him showing up to a budget meeting with his sword from Conan the Barbarian, being like, "I'm going to use this to slash the budget," and the head of the Democratic Senate was like, "This isn't funny. People die because of these cuts. Like, this is serious." So this is when he does the long closing. This is the first long new rule, and then he does a monologue about the rule. And it's so egregious to me, the way he pauses after each line to, like, wait for applause. It's, like, pathetic.
it's so pathetic.
He doesn't keep going. He stops and just stares. And it's meant to, he's waiting for them to laugh, but none of them are really punchlines. So the crowd kind of goes like, ah, and then starts clapping. And it's not desperate, which bothers me more. It's like sanctimonious. Like he's like, of course they're going to clap. Listen to what I'm saying. This is like important shit that's also funny. And who is the greatest philosopher of all, if not the comedian?
Yeah.
And after everything else, sitting through this, I was like, this is the hardest thing to sit through in the entire show. To sit here and just watch this guy just like fucking be so smug. And like, yeah, they shouldn't have fucking recall. It should be harder to recall people in California. It's absurd how easy it is. And to have the election for the replacement be a part of the recall. It's insane the way we do it here. None of it was about that. It was not about the specific way California does recalls. He was just like, hey, unless they're stealing money or have child porn, you're stuck with your bad decision. And he like kind of tied it in back with Bush. I think he even says something like, George Bush, liberals weren't unhappy about that, but they're not trying to do this to him. And it's like, no, we just talked about how some of them do want to.
Some of them are, yeah.
It's really fucking bad. I can't believe I'm now stuck with this for the rest of this fucking show. It is like, you know, I ask you like, oh, any thoughts on new rules? I knew you weren't. You might have one. There's nothing distinctive
There's nothing in here. There's nothing interesting here.
Dude, I have a whole book of these. He published these as a book. Like,
it's so fucking stupid. And it's just like, dude, you're Andy Rooney. You're being Andy Rooney and you're being bad at being Andy Rooney. And you don't realize you're aging yourself. You're fucking doing a reverse Dorian Gray on yourself.
So we head into new rules. Please, you know, I talk, I edit the show and I see how much more I talk than my guests. I do my best not to. This one, truly, there were some fucking really bad new rules. There were 4 new rules. Some of them were quite bad. Please take it as much as you'd like. Please take it away.
Yeah. So this was a journey for me because he had 1 or 2 jokes that I did find funny. And in brief moments, I was like, wait, this was why I used to enjoy this show. And then anytime I started to be like, maybe I don't hate Bill Maher, he would then turn around and say something so fucked up that I was like, oh, no. And I should feel bad for forgetting for a moment that he was capable of this. He starts with the bit about, I don't fully remember this being a thing, but like he put up these photos of 2, I assume, dead terrorists and was talking about how we need to stop seeing their photos.
Yes. So
then showed the photos.
Yeah, that was those Uday and Qusay Hussein. Those were Saddam Hussein's sons who I think they just killed them within the last week, because it was a big deal when they were like, we got his kids. Like everybody was really pumped. And I mean, to be fair, they were awful guys.
It was just so strange to be like, stop showing these photos while showing the photos.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what point you're making anymore. So strong start.
Even then, it's like, if you show the photos at the start, couldn't you then switch and be like, at least give us one of these, and like, I don't know, alter the photos so they look like, do something with the photos as like the joke, like being like, and I know I've already stepped in, but it's just because this is the one that ended with Eliza Minnelli. The punchline was about Liza Minnelli and David Guest and about their divorce.
And how, like, if he wanted to look at 2 dead corpses, he would follow their news.
If I want to see footage of 2 lifeless, hideous corpses, I'll watch Access Hollywood's coverage of Liza's breakup.
Liza Minnelli catching strays.
Arrested Development did so much to make people appreciate Liza Minnelli again. It was
Absolutely.
like so key in reminding people like, oh, this is like one of the most talented people ever.
She's a gem.
Yeah.
How dare you, Bill Maher?
He somehow managed to make this joke without calling David Guest gay, so maybe that's growth.
And also, it gets so much worse from here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Next up, he has the bit about rap slang, about how upset he is that now, like, shizzle my nizzle, I think is what he's referring to. Even that he kind of botches.
Cut the schnizzle.
He's upset that people are using the slang, or I didn't understand if he was upset that it was now so in use that it's over. And then he just drops the fucking craziest thing I've ever heard someone say, at least I take that back. Some crazy shit has been said, but this was one of those moments where I was like, wow.
Attention, all real rappers. You have guns for a reason. Use them.
And again, what is the joke? Who are you mad at? And again, you spent the entire show referencing weird rap slang.
You
like,
said
what is happening?
You said
they were big pimping back then.
Earlier. You said the Abraham of the Old Testament was.
You are who you are mad at. What are you doing? Also, the photo he had up for this segment was of Snoop Dogg in like a traditional 2000s pimpy outfit. Good for him. I am very Caucasian white. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. What I found so funny was Snoop Dogg right now is like judge commentating the equestrian event at the Olympics with Martha Stewart. And I'm like, this is just so weird, the direction that these men's lives have taken. And Bill Maher is so much more the problem for this rule.
Yeah, it's like of the two guys, the one who has not grown, who has regressed is Bill Maher and not
100%.
Notorious gangster rapper Snoop Dogg. Yes, when it was him, because Fashizzle My Nizzle was Snoop's thing for a while.
Izzle Kizzle. Fashizzle. My nizzle.
And I'm pretty sure the joke is it's not funny for old people to do rap slang in TV, which is like makes it even worse, because I had the same reaction of like, wait, do you want them to like?
What are you saying?
Do you want them to like kill Betty White? You want like?
Yeah, who are they supposed to be using these guns on?
Yeah, like the writers in the rooms. Like, come on, man, they're just cashing a check. They're not.
Is this Bill Maher saying, "Please kill me. I have lived too long"? Is this a suicide attempt?
Yeah,
what is happening?
This is his version of like suicide by cop or something. It's like, I dare rappers to use their guns to kill any old person who uses rap slang. And then next week,
big pimpin'.
God, I think there was some ad where a woman was like, "For shizzle my bizzle," and it around this time, just being like, God, the culture is so awful.
That was the 2000s. Like, that was such a specific 2000s thing. And then I think we all realized, okay, we killed it. We have murdered this joke. It is time to colonize some other aspect of Black culture.
I'll be honest, if I saw a rapping granny in something now, I might laugh.
It's still funny.
It'd be such a throwback. I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't seen a fucking rapping granny in like a decade at this point.
It's vintage now. That's good. I mean, also, that is what TikTok is. A lot of TikTok is that.
That's very true. My friend had a shirt that said "Tickle This Elmo," and he started wearing it like 10 years after the "Tickle Me Elmo" came out. And he was like, it's funny now. Oh, it was "Tickle This Elmo" and an arrow pointing down at his penis. I forgot that key detail.
I really hope he bought it in like a gift shop in New York City in like 2002.
I think like his uncle gave it to him and his mom was like, you can't wear that. And it like sat in his closet for like a decade. And then he was like, oh my God, he was like a paintball weirdo. And he was like, I'm going to start fucking wearing this. Your thoughts on the last two new rules?
Oh boy. Well, so we have the joke about people who call and leave you a voicemail and say it's me, which was, again, like the lowest stakes thing to possibly make fun of. He loves to get really mad at people showing him affection.
Yeah.
Like, you should probably just be glad anyone's calling you, Bill. Like, just be happy. He puts a picture on the screen about how I already have a me in my life. It's me, which I admit, I laughed at.
Yeah.
Because he is the most self-involved man in the world. And I was like, this joke works on so many levels for me. I'm enjoying it.
Truly,
And then
nobody
he puts
has more of a me
picture
in
up.
their life than him. Yes.
Exactly. He is his own soulmate. And then he puts a photo of himself on looking very serious while he like scowls at the camera himself. And I took a screenshot and I was like, this needs to be preserved. This is a meme. But that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is harmless. He's really making fun of himself, whether or not he realizes that. I'm enjoying myself. And then he hard pivots into Hamas.
Yeah.
And I was like, I regret coming on this podcast.
Uh-huh. This was 3 years before Hamas, because towards the end of Bush's second term, they were like, this will be a huge win. We're going to convince Israel to get out of Gaza. We're going to let them have an election. So this even predates that. Like, I could be wrong, but this has so clearly been like such a personal thing to him for 2 decades. Because like, I don't fucking remember ever hearing about Hamas until, and part of it is because I'm in Canada and it's just like Israel is just like not the same there. Not that it's any better the way politicians treat it, but like I don't remember any talk about Hamas until they won the 2006 election. So yeah, this is like clearly something that like is really fucking stuck in his craw this whole time.
It felt like such a time warp moment because he was so heated. And I was like, I feel like is this a time warp situation where I have mixed up what I'm watching? And I guess the hook was that someone had listed Hamas as a charity because they provided some infrastructure within Gaza.
So it was
like there was a thing.
It was terrorist. New rule: terrorist organizations can't also be charities. And yeah,
wow, what a breakthrough. I don't think anyone was really saying that.
And again, it's like okay, well, truly one man's terrorist organization. It's this thing that keeps coming up where his worldview, both his and the general worldview of like America is the main country. America is the protagonist of the world, so like if a country has opposing goals to America, they are inherently both a bad guy, and if he had more to say about it, I mean, not really fine, but if he'd had more to say about it, at least he would have had more to say about it. But this is the new rule that leads into the monologue, and he just keeps hitting the same fucking beat over and over and over.
First, you can't forget his beautiful pun of habitat for inhumanity.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Really genius.
Why would you remind me? I had managed to memory hold that one. That was one of the ones I managed to, my brain was like, into the garbage with this fucking thing.
I just wrote, get out of here, Bill, in my notes. Again, cringe, just unforgivable, so bad. It's the laziest joke.
Habitat.
And then he just pivots hard into Islamophobia.
It's one thing to go after. Hamas is not the most difficult target, particularly in 2003. Like, it's going to be a pretty easy way to get some real cheap heat. But he does have to delve into how
far too many Muslims in the world feeding children and knocking down the World Trade Center can both be considered good works.
And I'm positive this came out. It's just one of those things. It's like, do you have like a study? Do you have a citation for this? Would be great. Other than just like, well, I just feel like it's true. The thing you talked about with when Ben Affleck was on the show, and there's also that clip of Glenn Greenwald on the show that goes around all the time, where it's like people are fucking violent, man. It was the same thing when SAG canceled the picket line here because of the fucking, they were afraid of the Muslim Day of Violence. And I just remember being like, this is fucking crazy to act as if like, well, the Muslim violence switch has been flipped up and it won't come down for 24 hours. Like,
the sleeper agents have been activated.
It's so gross and it's so shallow and it holds up to no scrutiny. And it is impossible to knock him off this perch.
He's completely unable to look at it. And you'll probably play the clip of that quote, but like he basically says that.
Well, now
Muslims...
I'm not gonna, because you told me to. I'm not gonna do it.
I'm sorry, I ate the bit.
Nobody tells me what to do on my fucking show, all right? And then the episode just ends.
Next week, it's like, bro, no one fucking thinks that. Even the terrorists were not like, this is just as good as feeding children. Like, it's just such a stupid exaggeration, let alone lumping together millions and millions, if not billions of people. It's so staggeringly offensive, and yet just no, just tosses it out there, fully convinced that he's like landed a home run. It's so grating.
You know, you could make the argument, it's like, well, if one person thinks that, you could make the case that that's too many. Like, that's not really, you're not really like, you know, there are people who think it's okay to like have sexual intimacy with children, even if there's one. That's one too many. So like Ensembles is a pretty easy case you're making here to legislate.
Yeah, it's like legalese where he's like far too many. It's like, well, what does far too many mean?
I met one guy who said that to me one time, and I think that's far too many, so I'm not wrong. It's so Catholic of him. He grew up Catholic, and like Catholicism is so lawyerly in the way it's like, look, it was in the butt. God can't, like as if you're gonna, you know, be on the verge of getting sent to hell, and God is like, damn it, he fucking got me on a technicality.
He found a loophole.
So then he kind of closes it by being like, nobody wants to see like terrorist charity events.
Oh my God, poor Pamela Anderson catching strays again.
It's like, you know, Pamela Anderson will be there with her tits hanging out. And it's like, is that a thing? Like, was she at a lot of was she at a lot of charity events? Like, did you were you like horny in the writer's room and you were like, no, she's the reference, leave it in?
I was trying to think, like, is this a reference to her doing like PETA campaigns? Like, is this like a specific, like, is he referent? But again, it's like this joke is too poorly written because you have to make so many connections in your own head to get there. And again, like, you didn't need to add sexism on top of the Islamophobia. Like, he's just finding a way to be as offensive as possible.
That's a great question you just asked. Anderson has often started a number of campaigns for the organization, the first of which was 26 years ago. And that was last year. So yes, since 97, she has been doing PETA campaigns.
But like, that's one charity. She doesn't go to every charity.
Yeah, and
she's not the only celebrity who does charity things. Like, it's such bad faith.
And that's not at an event either. It was like billboards she did. And then he also says no one wants to see Joan Rivers on the red carpet with Yasser Arafat. And it's like, that's at award shows. That's not at charity events.
That's a different thing.
It's a different thing. And speak for yourself. I would have liked to see Joan Rivers interview Yasser Arafat on a red carpet. I would be so morbidly curious to see what would happen during that conversation. I don't think those two people would get along very well, if I can be honest.
Excellent television, unlike this.
And then he says something about how the last note I have is, I guess during that monologue, he just said something like, we broke up the phone companies. And I just wrote, no, we didn't. What the fuck is he talking about? We broke up the phone companies. There are 3 phone companies now.
And what is your point, bro?
Yeah.
Just where are you going? What are even like the monologue ends just with like a total non sequitur about how like this will never be resolved. So it's like, what are you talking about? What are we doing here?
Right. Yes. It ends with the comment about how he can't wait for the day that Jews and Palestinians live side by side, 1,200 years after all of us are dead. Yeah, so that's it. That's the end. It's really anticlimactic. Like,
it was very anticlimactic. It was such a downer to end on, and also confusing because that also wasn't really what he was talking about.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, we weren't talking about the conflict over Gaza. We were talking about Hamas, and then it just like spiraled out into okay.
It was about, I guess you could say maybe it was like, well, it's like Hamas is really only in Gaza and Palestinians are in 2 places. Like, you're absolutely correct. This was a monologue that was missing pieces of it and repeated certain pieces. Yes, you've narrowed it down for me. That is the thing that bothered me the most about it, is that its conclusion, they tried to circle back to the start for the conclusion and they really failed at that. And they didn't really go on much of a journey anyway, so you'd be hard-pressed to see that as any sort of U or circle. It's like the world's flattest oval. I'll tell you what, though. After getting it on with Bingo, I'd fuck that oval, huh? I'd fuck the oval of that monologue.
I was trying to think of how I could make a bingo joke, and I'm glad you did it for me.
And that's how you do a Herald. So then they go to new rules. He introduces new rules by saying,
I have to get to this week's new rules because that's what we do every week at this time.
And it's just like, God, what a passion for what you do.
I know.
Just so much enthusiasm. Hey, I got to go to this because, you know, that's what we do around
because
here.
it's a segment I made up. And so now I'm forcing all of us to go through it.
So the new rules, do you want to start off with any new rules thoughts?
I hate this. It's like
This is
It's
kind of the
like-
worst. This is kind of the worst stuff on the whole show in terms of like
none
making
of
my
his
skin crawl.
bits are real thought out bits. Like the framework of these things are like, here's another excuse for me to say whatever the fuck I want to say. So like
Yeah.
new rules is like, hey, I'm gonna say something insulting in a way that there's a cadence to what I'm saying so that the audience has to laugh at the end. And that's it.
Yeah, and often they don't. He just pauses until they start clapping.
Yeah.
Yes. So new rules. This is like the stuff on the show that really made me go, oh. His first new rule is enough with gay exploitation. And then he complains about Queer Eye. But the thing is, like, he's framing it as if there was this explosion in the wake of Queer Eye of like shows about gay men showing people how to do anything. But I think it was just Queer Eye.
Well, there were other like, isn't it like the L word and stuff? Was that like earlier? Maybe 90s?
That I think is around the same time, but that's like a different thing because he's specifically talking about shows where gay men teach straight men like how to dress and how to live.
Yeah. Also, like Bill Maher is not is not the person anyone would go to speak on behalf of gay people.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, he is
Give
like
5 gay people a job, and Bill Maher's like, enough already.
Yeah. And what's like really, they do like a Chiron underneath with another joke. And the Chiron.
Oh, so they do have a Chiron.
Yes.
They have one.
Mhm.
They're capable.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
And this one for Enough with Gay Exploitation TV, the Chiron said, I'm just reading it out for the record. It said, check your local lispings. And I saw that and I was like, I don't know why, but this is like one of the most homophobic things I've ever seen in my life. There is something about it which it seems innocuous, but like it just feels like one of the most hateful things.
No one in that other than Janine Garofalo, no one in that room could ever possibly be interpreted as queer.
And yes, so the next one is, again, I'm just reading it. This is for the record. In fat ass stomach stapling America, stop focusing on the 3 people who don't eat enough. So it's well known he hates fat people. He hates anybody who is not thin, like beyond any sort of like, he has no like threshold where he starts to be disgusted with people. He's disgusted by almost like any sort of visible fat on a person's body. And this is a great example of not only being like fucked up, but it's also so factually wrong because in 2003, it's not like we were hurting for people with eating disorders. I think 2000.
I know. I didn't understand this because I was like, that was the era of eating disorders.
And like, particularly in the early 2000s, it was like a whole wave of women in the entertainment, like women stars, just like losing every ounce of fat on their body and looking like kind of like hollowed out. And like,
this is that thing now that people say where like Republicans will make up somebody to be angry at. And it's like, I don't understand because he's like, I hate fat people, but also stop fat shaming skinny people. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, he's like mad about skinny shame. This is like the first like don't skinny shame people pre-Tumblr thing I've ever seen.
Fat shaming. I don't understand it. It didn't make sense to me at all.
Well, then he goes, that's just her body type. This to me is one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen on the show. When he goes, that's just her body type. You can tell from this picture of her from when she was a child.
That was the fucking thing that freaked me out. That was the joke.
Yeah, it shows that photo of her name is Van T. Kim Phuc, and she was at the time the 9-year-old girl in the photo from the Vietnam War, which everybody calls Napalm Girl, which is like one of the most horrific photos. Like a little girl running down the street naked, screaming in agony because she's been scorched by napalm. And it has what we were talking about earlier with like rape jokes and like what are you employing them for? What are you using them for? And this is the kind, it's like I could not imagine a scenario where the use of this like horrifying historical artifact, which is like one of the great modern symbols of just like the horrors and depravity of war. I can't imagine a way to use it more flippantly than this.
And the panelist was like, oh, like the panelists in the audience went, oh, but like because it's framed as a comedy show and because Bill Maher is framed as a comedian, they were like, we can't take this as seriously as we should because we know we're supposed to act a certain way.
And I'm sure they're told like, hey, don't talk during New Rules.
Yeah. But like it very obviously was like everybody in the room knew that it was bad.
Hated it.
Yeah.
And he gets this like smug look on his face after he says it when the crowd's like, oh.
Yeah, it's like definitely a guy who on his dating profile is like, I really love dark humor. Like that's the vibes.
And the smug look on his face is just so like, you guys weren't ready for that one. It's like, how could anyone be ready for that one? How could anyone be ready to see that photo completely out of nowhere, out of context, does not relate? A classic example of the way he will do punchlines that have nothing to do with the setup. It's just like a reference to something. Like he loves to do that with Liza Minnelli and David Guest, their like divorce. And it is like the rest of New Rules just doesn't have good vibes. Like people aren't really happy. And then his next one, the third one, is Skip the Truck. And it's a picture of George Bush on his ranch. And he's like, he's trying to use it. I don't even remember what he uses it to kind of, what point he kind of segues into. But like, what's crazy is he even admits, he's like, I know you're on your ranch clearing brush. And it's like, yeah. So he's actually using the truck. Of all the things to have a problem with George W. Bush, the man very much used his pickup truck for pickup truck things.
He contradicted himself in his own setup. He does it all the time. I think he's like one of those people where he's like, I don't have a perspective, so nobody else must either. Or like, I'm contradictory, so other people probably are.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. This is like kind of the mystery. These are the only kinds of things where I think Bill Maher is an idiot, but I don't think Bill Maher lacks the capacity to know things. I think he very consciously decides he already does. And his like lifelong career success has never given him a reason to doubt himself. But this is the kind of thing where it's like, don't you notice the contradiction in your own thing? Like, I don't know how you can't be looking at that and reading it during the rehearsal, flipping the paper around to your writers and being like, oh, this doesn't make any sense.
I was very skeptical when you said you had a podcast about Bill Maher's show, but now I see the passion in you to understand this enigma of a man. But it's not apathy. It's not apathy.
No.
You hate him, but it drives you. And like I could see that in your trying to understand him. What would you do if at the end of this podcast you got an interview with him?
I've said all along, I won't do it. I hate that. I don't.
You wouldn't.
No, it's like when it's like, what do I need to talk to him for?
Just ask him, show him an example of one joke that is a contradiction like this and ask him to work it out with you. See like how he will, you can't like, I don't think you'll be able to pin him down. I think he won't be able to, his ego will not allow him to admit it.
Yeah. My whole thing is like, I just don't know why I talk to him because I feel like I'm making my case. I feel like it's like, maybe be like calling somebody being like, hey, we're requesting we're making a request for comment on all of the horrible shit we've uncovered that you did in this like bulletproof case. But like, other than that, it's just like, and I also think it's like, I don't ever want it to seem like he's like in on it, or it's like, I don't want to give him the chance to sort of seem like good humored about it. Cause it's not good humored. I'm mad. It enrages me. He's enraged me for so long.
Yeah.
That I have like dealt with this and been like obsessed with it. It's like I am very open about this man has lived in my head rent free for almost a decade. Also during this, so what you referenced earlier, what we were talking about him, he fucks up saying,
or that Julie Louis-Dreyfus sitcom. Sorry about that.
But then he's clearly so shaken that he says George Borsh.
George Bush.
I loved that. I was like, make him Russian. You know what I mean? We love to see it. George Borscht.
Or he's made himself Swedish and is calling him like Georgia Borsh.
Georgia Borscht.
Yeah. a lot of great options. A lot of fun there.
We love that. Whimsy.
With Kobe references. So then we get to New Rules, Mike. And I emailed you from the plane about the last New Rule and how fucked up it was. And you were like, buddy, I stopped paying attention. So I've got the New Rules.
I'm opening up your email so I can read that again. But also, get this. I wrote down I had to start watching at double speed. Unbelievable. None of this. Oh, one other thing in the new rules. Okay,
yeah.
I have one thing.
Okay, you get a new rule note.
Okay, so he goes, he's bang. The trucker hat and Krispy Kreme stuff is ridiculous. One of the punchlines where he gets an applause break is, "Your daughter's a whore."
Yes.
And I'm like, that's what a time 2003 was, huh? And then he just kept saying blacks. Like,
yes.
he kept saying blacks over and over again. It's atrocious. And my last thing is like, this is a racist monologue. And he just kept saying blacks over and over again.
So
those are all my notes. I'm throwing them out.
Okay, so here's new rule. Here's new rule number 1.
New rule, show Arnold's movies. FCC fairness rules will discourage television stations from showing Arnold Schwarzenegger movies between now and Election Day. But is this really fair? Won't it discourage other washed up, clapped out, wizened old hams from entering public service? I love Burt Reynolds. Please don't make me choose between having him as Surgeon General or rewatching Stroker Ace. Don't make me pick between Tanya Roberts in Night Eyes and Tanya Roberts as head of the Bureau of Land Management.
Okay, so there's more to that one. He gets mad that they don't laugh at that bit, at his reference to softcore pornography. And this is kind of nitpicking with the joke. Both of the positions he listed in the punchline are not elected officials. They're appointed. So that they don't even apply to what he's fucking talking about. Also, Burt Reynolds, he references a Burt Reynolds movie, surely from the 80s. And again, I want to emphasize this, softcore pornography.
Let me say this. I didn't get any of these references. Did I do any research whatsoever? No, not at all. But here is what I have to say about new rules in general. The music is in the studio. You hear the music. Why are you doing everything in your power to not ride the music? Everything that he says is so off in a way rhythmically that is unpleasant and frustrating, because don't you want to use that to your advantage? That you've got this music under you, you're going, new rules. It's the flagship segment of this ridiculous monstrosity. And here you go. You take the rhythm of a joke that, honestly, these should be the tightest jokes of the show, save for the monologue, which we've already seen how that went.
Yeah, real tight.
But what I'm saying is just like, what a...
He's taking his headphones. He took his headphones out, ladies and gentlemen. Listeners at home,
real adjustment.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else. Mike took his headphones out in the middle of his own sentence to compose himself.
I couldn't bear the fact that there is no effort to. There's no effort to condense. There's no effort to make punchy. There's no effort to. There's no element about Bill Maher, his delivery, his hesitate to call it work, his output. His you know what? His content. What he does, I safely feel okay calling content. Content in the context of Bill Maher is not the insult it is to say Maria Bamford. Okay? Maria Bamford is an artist. She's a stand-up comedian. She puts out specials. She puts out comedy sets. Bill Maher puts out content to be absorbed by equally stupid people. And genuinely, the fact that he has zero inclination towards any craft, no
craft to what he does.
There's zero artistry in any sense of it. Like, it is mind-boggling. It's insulting. Everybody whose time is wasted watching this, being present for it in the audience, being at all exposed to it for as long as he's been around. The writers that are forced to rewrite until it sounds long enough to sound like his hack bullshit ass. It's honestly, I can imagine the writer's room maybe being like competent, and then he reads it over and goes, doesn't sound anything like me. And you're like, oh, that's right. I'm Laurie Kilmartin and I write jokes and good stuff. Here, let me write something that's based on this idea. I'm a fucking idiot and I love this. And he's like, so we could lose the part about me being the fucking idiot. What about Schwarzenegger? And Laurie's like, you're a genius. Pay my money. And I picked Laurie as an example because she's a
she would have been
staff
about
writer on
25 or something at the time, I think.
Doesn't matter. She wouldn't have touched the show with a 10-foot pole. What a nightmare that would. Anyway, point is, Bill Maher approaches this entire show, his dream show. He approaches the entire thing with a blasé, laissez-faire, this, oh, I'm a prince and you are all peasants shit. And there's no pride. There's no pride in what he presents whatsoever. It's all from a smugness, and that's what allows him to push forward with saying too much and getting nowhere with it. And it is honestly the most frustrating experience is watching him feel even a modicum of, oh yeah, I'm cooking right now. You know what I mean? It feels insulting to anybody for him to even like titter at his own setup that he's just reading now for the first time, or to like go off and be like a boiled ham. What's next? Who's another celebrity who had movies? Let's pick Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds, who at the time is just doing fine, right?
I think he was probably on. He probably still had some juice left post Boogie Nights, but I think Boogie Nights was like 98, so not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, what is this?
Do you want to hear him complain that the audience didn't like the bit? Well, I'm going to play it.
Yes, please.
It'll build. Now, some of these rules you think I wouldn't have to point out, but okay.
What does he mean by it'll build? And he's like, some of these rules you think I wouldn't have to point it out, but okay. It's like, well, maybe you should flip that around and go, oh, some of these rules I have to literally tell the crowd that was a joke. You were supposed to laugh. Maybe if you investigate the other side of that, you'll think, oh, maybe it wasn't good if I had to tell them that, as opposed to being like, you'd think that by now the audience would know they just laugh at everything I say. Okay, here's new rule 2.
New rule. When somebody dies, we shouldn't cut off their head and drill holes into it. Ted Williams belongs in the hall, not the
Ted
fridge.
Williams.
It's time to admit that cryogenics is one of those technologies that just doesn't work, like the missile defense shield and hair transplants.
So I cut it off quick. I actually did him a favor that time because that's as big as the laugh gets afterwards. That one really bombs quite bad. What? Your neck is like pulsing.
I mean, it's it's partly that cyst I have, and then also okay, I don't know. So wait, Ted Williams being
He was the
baseball player?
Yes, his head is cryogenically frozen.
Okay.
Okay, here's the third one.
New rule. No, you can't have your bomb back.
It's a picture of Ted Kaczynski.
Unabomber Ted Kaczynski has asked a judge to release his personal effects from his shack, including one of his bombs. Hey, mister, possessing bombs is a privilege, not a right. Come on, how do you expect to be elected California's next governor if you keep saying crazy things like, I want my bomb back?
So I genuinely had a moment as I was watching that where I thought the punchline was going to be, and I didn't actually think this, but I just had a moment where it seemed possible, where he would go, if Ted Kaczynski wants a bomb, he should just watch New Rules.
Oh my God! Why would you ever think he would say this,
dude?
But that's a better direction for the joke. If he wants a bomb, we should send him all of Schwarzenegger's movies. That would be a way better thing than like, hey, you can governor of California,
Dude,
the hammer
over it. He has been talking about this for fucking weeks. He is fucking obsessed because they recalled the governor. That's how Schwarzenegger originally became governor of California. They recalled the Democratic governor, and the recall process in California is like stupid and doesn't make any sense the way it works. Fucking obsessed with it and won't stop talking about it to the point where it's ruining his own show and his own jokes.
Yes. The idea that no, you can't have your bomb back. The Ted Kaczynski asking for his stuff to be released is a great premise to like stay with.
Yeah.
Like it's the instinct to include this in the show, correct. And to begin with, no, you can't have your bomb back. That's good. But like to go nowhere with it, to absolutely tie it in no way to Kaczynski in any way. It just literally is the stories about him, and now I'm mad about Arnold.
Let me tell you, that's a classic Bill Maher joke on the show where the setup is one thing, and then the punchline is like, and Liza Minnelli's husband is gay. It's like From Dusk Till Dawn. If you separated the two halves, you would not know that they went together. So here's
I'm gonna say this quietly because you're gonna have to bleep it anyway. I honestly believe that if and I'm saying this because I don't know how well I'm gonna be doing, but if in my lifetime I am ever to be around when yeah, I think that'll do.
Okay.
I think that'll do.
New rule.
Yeah,
it's
like that.
just a donut. What is up with the Krispy Kreme phenomenon? It's a glob of deep-fried dough, not Super Bowl tickets. Aren't we Americans fat enough without pretending that donuts are hip? And while we're at it, if you're not a trucker hat isn't cool either.
So he also long-running hatred of anyone who is not unbelievably thin from
50
Bill
years
Maher.
old.
He also is like a fucked up health food guy, which you can tell to be like, who cares about a donut? It's like, who cares about a donut? Like, they're really good, man. Donuts.
They're good.
But I wanna zoom in. The fat phobia, that's nothing new. I want to zoom in on the addendum at the end with the trucker cap, which, sorry, that's a second new rule. You can't just throw it on there and make it the same rule. I want you to, is your computer open right now?
It feels insane.
Just Google Bill Maher
It is, yeah.
wearing hat.
Okay.
Now,
Google images. Oh my God.
does this seem like a guy who should
head.
be judging other people's hat choices? He wore a fedora to his Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. He looks fucking ridiculous. He's in like a suit and a fedora. He looks like the world's biggest asshole. I can't believe I'm saying this. Ashton Kutcher looks like less of an asshole in a trucker cap than Bill Maher does.
Yeah, but also, look, not for nothing, Ashton Kutcher at the time was the it guy, and the trucker hat was the it thing. The punchline to this might as well be like, hey, Krispy Kreme, get over it. Donuts are disgusting, and I have a lot of hang-ups about fat people. Also, another thing, I'm old. You know, like that's what the joke is. There's no. This is letting your uncle talk for too long. You went to the kitchen to get us a drink out of the fridge, and somebody said, "Well, hey." If Danny's gonna be here, I don't want him in the living room. He's got to be in the kitchen. And then Enzo, you need to stay in the living room. If you need to switch places, you both switch places. We make a whole thing of it. You guys switch places without talking to each other. It's like you have to separate them, and then you're the only one that goes into the kitchen to get something. And he's like, "Oh, finally somebody to talk to here." It's like, "Hey, did you hear Krispy Kreme? Huh? How good could these fucking be?" You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I brought those donuts. He's like, "Yeah, you would, you fat little piggy." And I'm like, "Oh, this you want to talk to me like this? You want to talk to me like this?" It's like, "Also, trucker hats aren't cool." I'm like, "You're bald, you stupid bitch." Anyway, I don't understand.
Oh, sorry.
I don't understand how this man has anything to say. I can't. I hate Bill Maher. Is not only the name of this podcast, but it is earnestly how I feel. And when you message me, here's the thing. When you message me, my instinct was, no, I don't want to do this. And I'm being completely honest. No. My first thought was, why are you doing this?
I tell everybody. I absolutely understand if they say no.
No, I know. But to me, I'm like, oh, but I miss Will. I want to talk to Will. This is a great excuse to hang out for a bit. But I didn't realize just how much he brings this out of me. I am so angry. I hate him. I really hate him.
All right.
Is this the new rule that made you think that the air marshal would have arrested you?
No, there's one more after this.
New rule. Enough with the fake outrage.
It's a picture of tight end
New York
Jeremy
Giants
Shockey.
tight end Jeremy Shockey called Dallas coach Bill Parcells a homo. So what? You know, from now on, just as an experiment, let's try judging people by what they do instead of what they say. This is life on Earth, not Simon Says. The problem isn't that George Bush said 16 words about Niger. The problem is he's a crazy person who thinks global warming is good for jogging. Besides, when jocks say homo, it's not to be taken literally. It's just meant as a general insult, like when Ann says traitor.
So what's so funny about that part? Like, it's not homophobic. It's just used as a general insult. And it's like, yeah, you know why they use it as a general insult? Because they don't like gay people. And so to them, being gay,
disgusted.
yes, calling someone gay is an insult. Like, the idea of being of a writer being like, words don't mean what they mean. Give me a break.
Yeah. Also, the idea of don't judge people by what they say, judge them for what they do. And earlier in the episode, they're like, I like Berlusconi.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of that guy. He's great. Also, we're going to not judge people by what they say and instead judge by what they do. Oh, boy, is the future crazy for you.
Dude, there's so every single week there are things it's like, boy, wait until you listen to you talk about Gaza and people protesting for the people there. But also his whole, what people do. Here's an interview. Here's Jeremy Shockey was on Stern a year before this. Here's what he said during the interview. If I knew there was a gay guy on my college football team, I probably wouldn't, stand for it. I think, they're going to be in the shower with us and stuff, so I don't think that's going to work. That's not going to work, I would argue if a guy who said that a year earlier and then later called his coach a homo, that's worth being like, oh, this is like a bad guy, and we can judge this man's character. Also, judge someone on what they do, not what they say. Is speaking not an action? Like, is that not something you do?
Truly. Like, every time I say that I hope Bill Maher I mean it. I'm not just saying it because I think we'd be a better place. HBO's budget would open up and maybe we could get something good on there in his slot.
Yeah, I don't know what the budget. I'm very curious what because I think on sometimes I'm like, did they just like forget that this show's on the air and it's like it's cheap enough and it runs efficiently enough that like they don't notice it on the budget because now they're giving Zack Snyder $150 million to shoot additional scenes for Justice League. They don't notice this guy.
Yeah.
Here's the final new rule. This is so
they're putting out hacks at the same time as this.
Yes.
This is what they're doing.
Do you
They've got hacks and then it followed up by Bill Maher.
Even even like last week tonight, like to compare that with this, it's like hey, your uncle is the greatest guy I've ever met, but also your other uncle is a rapist and I hope he dies in prison. Like that's the family dynamic these shows are like. Do you have the email I sent you up?
I do.
What did I say to you?
You said, watch the episode on a plane. Pretty sure an air marshal would have arrested me if there'd been subtitles on the last new rules bit.
Okay, here's the last new rules bit. And you referenced it.
New rule. Your daughter's a whore.
Love it. They love
According to the FBI, there's a new wrinkle in prostitution. Suburban teenage girls are now selling their white asses at the mall to make money to spend at the mall. Wow, I can't even find an escalator that goes down.
So it's a lot of jokes about having sex with teenagers.
Uh-huh.
And not in a way where he's like, ew, but in a way where he's like, people do it. Like not, he's like, oh, no moral judgments for me. But so that's the new rule that then leads into the, and it's like, also, I looked up this study, Newsweek wrote a story on it. And obviously there is like girls are trafficked. Like human trafficking is real and is also usually done by someone you know and care about, so never trust or love anyone. But like this, hearing this, I'm like, this sounds like the biggest, such a huge crock of shit. This sounds like one of those things the FBI writes, and then 3 years later, it's like, oh my God, remember the fucking prostituting yourself at the mall panic that everybody went through? But this then feeds into the longer like new rule monologue, and it starts off with him being like, whites fled areas where, yes, his use of blacks is unacceptable in the year of our Lord 2003. Truly. But he's like, you fled...
even then.
Yes, that's what, yes. You fled black people because you thought they would turn them into dope-smoking prostitutes. And now it turns out it happened anyway because you know, they watch MTV and everything is Jay-Z and Big Pimp. And it's like, oh, okay, so you started off by being like, oh, white people, you thought black people were going to turn your children into prostitutes. And they did. I'm Bill Maher. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you're still blaming black people if you blame black culture for this. And as well, it's another weird thing. Oh, right. So obviously with New Rule, Your Daughter's a Whore. This is a classic. Emily Heller was the one who pointed out so many new rules are not rules. Like, it's not a rule to say your daughter is a whore. Yeah, like, hey, 2 minutes in the box for not being a whore. But, of course, I gotta, you know.
Cringe. There's no other word for it. This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
And a big part of it is your daughter's a whore. But I looked at this report a little bit and, like, boys were also doing it. But he just leaves that out because it makes him uncomfortable, whereas he's horny.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think one of the writers was like, oh, we could do a new rule about this, and he saw it and he was like, oh my god, I forgot I need to get pants from the mall for the show later. And then just like a Bill Maher shaped cloud was left in the room as they heard his car leave the parking lot.
I'm Googling Bill Maher, Real Time with Bill Maher Writers 2003. That's what I'm up to right now.
Somebody emailed me and was like, this guy was a writer on the show in the early days, and now he has a podcast and he talks shit about Bill Maher. You should see if he wants to be on the show. And I was like, I've kind of, you know, in a at least roundabout way said not nice things about him. But look, I've also said, you're right what you're told to write. I know that. I understand that. There are some things I would just simply not write, but you also never know who wrote what joke in the room. And then we go to, of course, new rules. I'm considering making the guest do the Okay, great. So that's how I'm going to intro new rules from now on. The first new rule, I'll go through them, and if you have any thoughts.
Okay.
So first new rule.
New rule number 1, no more cell phones in movie theaters.
Okay, I agree. But how can you make this racist?
Yeah, the big punchline is about not the middle punchline is about black people yelling at the screen during movies. I will give this one credit for at least that is a rule. That is phrased like a rule.
It is a rule. You have to put it in your asshole.
Also, I mean, a part of it is like I have never been in a movie theater that is majority black people. I've just experienced people. If you're watching like a horror movie, I've just experienced people yelling during movies. And I don't know if Bill Maher would try to claim that's cultural appropriation. But like, also though, like when I saw Paranormal Activity, people were yelling out a lot during it. And I didn't turn around to be like, what is the race of the person who just said that? Like,
Bill Maher goes to movies a lot where it's all black people, and they're like, my demographic is black.
So I'll say, his
I'm one of the blacks, as he would say.
When I saw Widows, it was a pretty empty theater, but there was like a long line of like late middle-aged black women sitting behind us. And when Cynthia Erivo slapped Viola Davis during that movie, that is the loudest gasp I have ever heard in my entire life. Those women could not believe what they just saw. So the second one is not a rule.
New rule, stop patting ourselves on the back over the blackout.
I don't know.
There were big blackouts on the East Coast. He was talking about it on the last episode. There was like a lot of blackouts on the East Coast. And I guess people were being like, hey, we did a great job. And his whole thing is like...
yeah, you're supposed to. Okay.
First of all, any time I hear a joke like that, it just reminds me of the Chris Rock, I take care of my kids.
Oh, yes.
You're supposed to,
yes.
You dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's not a rule. A little rule correction. It could be no or no more patting ourselves on the back over the fucking blackout. Right there. Fixes it into a rule. Yeah, that's one of those ones where you're like, okay, this is like...
Right. That's nothing. It's nothing.
It's a personal preference.
Yeah.
Third new rule.
New rule. Enough with the flash mobs.
Okay, so here's my question. Fine, but how do you turn this into a rape joke, Bill?
He's got a gift, you know?
It's like it's like a choose your own adventure where the answer is rape every time for Bill Maher.
Or a
hilarious rape.
So this show is fucking my brain up because I don't even remember what you're talking about from this one.
13-year-old girls at a motel.
Oh yes, right.
And in the
Yeah.
context of everything else, maybe like in a vacuum, you're like a creep, like or something. You know what I mean?
His joke is, it's because he's like,
But I guess this is what you do with the internet when you can't find any 13-year-old girls who'll meet you at a motel.
But like we've already had 27 rape jokes, so that was just another. Like my brain is just like, why?
yeah.
Why is that hilarious?
That's it too, man. That's like the whole thing. It's like you just wreck your whole deal when you just like make people like roll their eyes and be like, Jesus Christ, again? You're even taking the like I'm a little shithead joy out of it by just numbing people into it. You don't even then get the satisfaction of being like, aren't I bad? And it's like, no, you keep doing this.
Right,
It's
like-
not bad anymore. I'm just like annoyed.
I would see kids in college like their books were all highlighted, and it's just like then nothing's highlighted. Do you know what I mean? Like if everything is rape,
Yeah, just read the book. Like,
Right.
You're not taking notes anymore. Also, what distracted me in this joke, what distracted me is when he goes, flash mobs are fight clubs for pussies. And when he said that, I was like, this feels like a classic joke where you hit the structure of a joke and you put in references that make it sound like a joke. But then when you think about it, you're like, could you elaborate on that? Because I
Fight
don't really
clubs.
understand how flash mobs are fight. I guess it's just a club for pussies.
it's not like a fight club.
No, he's just saying it's a club for pussies is his thing.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not.
Yeah.
because it's comparing two things.
It's like you're not meeting in secret. You're not getting out like male rage. You're not satirical. It's just a club. It's just a club is what he's saying.
I remember somebody saying to me that the laziest jokes are that's like this, and I remember like. And I think about it every time I almost write something like that. Like, that'd be like this.
Final new rule.
And finally, new rule. Somebody make a movie I want to go out and see.
So again, not a rule. Before I get to your thoughts on this one, I want to brainstorm. How would you make this an actual rule?
Yeah,
I made an attempt at it because this is a
Oh,
really
you wanted to
cumbersome one.
finish the
Like, no, just how do you make somebody make a movie I want to go out and see? That's not a rule. That's not being expressed the way you would express a rule.
Okay.
So my best attempt at it would be new rule: 10% of all new movies must be made for people who aren't idiots. That's my Bill Maher.
That's a good. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Like that's a rule. Like put in the work.
Or
put in the
aren't
fucking effort.
children. You
Yes,
would have loved
like-
it leaning into that.
And I just talked about this with Mike. You have a full week to write this. There's so little writing on this show.
And finally, new rule. At least one movie a week has to be for adults and not children. Okay?
Great. Like
That's a rule.
That's a rule. If you
Yeah.
put that in a rule book for people who made movies, they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck, we got to make one of these. This is the most I'm an old man rule of just him being like, these movies are dumb and they're loud. One movie, he's like, I saw Bad Boys 2, and I was like, Bad Boys 2?
Everyone loves that movie.
It's incredible. When he's like, the THX intro was the only part of the plot that made sense. It's like, who cares?
When's the last time you heard anyone say anything but glowing reviews for Bad Boys 2?
And like at the time, people were like, really stupid movie, but a lot of fun. Also insane. And he's complaining where he's like, there are no movies. He's like, I know it's summer. And right there, it's like, yeah, it's summer. That's when all the dumb movies come out, especially in 2003. So it's late August when he says this.
Yeah.
Not but 1.5 months later, in October, you have both Mystic River and Kill Bill Volume 1. So a new Tarantino movie.
The day after the Steve Bartman baseball game where this guy blows it for the Cubs, I went and saw Kill Bill Volume 1 to make myself feel better.
The Cubs blew it for the Cubs, man.
It's an embarrassing time period. And just in culture. Yeah.
There was in Game 6 when the Flames were in the Stanley Cup Finals, Martin Jelena should have gotten a goal in the first period. Later they looked at replays and the puck crossed the line and it should have counted, and everybody was like, we should have won the Stanley Cup. And it's like, guys, there were 2.5 more periods after that. Do you think the Tampa Bay Lightning were just going to be like, they got us, let's fucking give it up? They clearly weren't, because they fucking won. And then, yes, like you said, in December there's Return of the King. Also that summer, Pirates of the Caribbean came out, which is like dumb and too long, but like everybody loved fucking Curse of the Black
Out
Pearl.
of morbid curiosity, I watched Tarantino on Club Random, and he did kind of punt. He hates anything that's for kids. He hates any movie that's...
Oh, Bill Maher does?
Bill Maher does,
Yeah, because there's a clip where Tarantino's like, the perfect trilogy is Toy Story 1 through 3.
Right. He's like, I can't watch 4 because you completed the story. It's like perfect. And he's like, what's that?
The cartoon?
Yeah.
And Tarantino's like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tarantino watches every movie that's ever been made.
Right.
So this guy clearly went to the movies and he didn't see anything he wanted to see. And so he showed up on Monday and he was like, we're closing New Rules, complaining about how all movies are shit these days.
But he says a thing in this. Oh, man. There is an episode of Sopranos where Tony dismisses Anthony by saying, like, oh, these kids want DVDs. And, like, I always thought that was so fucking... I rewatched it during COVID. In this one, Bill Maher, like, tops him. And he's just like, the kids you got to do it for kids because they... get DVDs and read Maxim magazine. And I'm like, this is a guy who wants to be Hugh Hefner as much as he wants to be Johnny Carson. So like, you're mad about Maxim? Like, that's right up your alley, pal.
So there's more we'll get. So I'm now unbelievably annoyed, and I'm doing an even deeper dive. Just thinking. So Open Range came out on August 15th. This fucking asshole loves Westerns. A week before this episode came out, Open Range came out. Well, The Fighting Temptations, that was bad. Nobody liked that. Like, they're
it wasn't a great year.
Dude, Lost in Translation,
wow.
September 12th. September 12th, 2 weeks from then is coming out. The Italian Job was a couple months earlier. That was not smart, but it wasn't as dumb.
But here's the thing. He also is very famous for every year when the Oscars would come out and be like, why do we have these serious movies?
Fuck, man. Can this guy just...
He doesn't know what he wants. No.
Can this guy just think a thing and then hold on to it?
No, every year he's like, who's going to watch the Oscars? What are you going to watch? The one about the guy in the concentration camp with AIDS? And it's like, so you don't want a kid's movie or like a very serious movie. Like, what do you want?
28 days later, June 27th. It was a month and or 2 months earlier. He had lots of shit. There was lots of shit that, again.
So Harry Potter, is that what he's specifically mad about?
No, I think it might be like, it's probably like Pirates of the Caribbean. I think Finding Nemo might have come out recently.
Okay.
That was like one of the big movies of that year.
And he definitely thinks that's like a cartoon for children.
I believe genuinely he went to the movies once a couple days earlier and was like, what the fuck?
Well, in the context of this, the person he's most mad about is Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Colin Farrell's the one guy who he says, I don't want to see movies with a cartoon bunny or Colin Farrell.
Like that, so he's mad at Minority Report? Or is he mad about Phone Booth? Like, what are you mad about?
Also, were movies good in the 90s and 80s? I don't remember that. Like, movies got stupid in the 1980s, famously. The 90s, all the good movies in the 90s were...
1999.
He's like, I'm not some asshole with a ponytail who wants to sit through a German language. And it's like, okay, then what do you want? Because movies in the 90s were bad, too. You had, like, Pulp Fiction would have been the one movie I can think of that you would have really liked.
Fight Club.
Fight guy who wouldn't get Fight Club. And then towards the end, do you have anything else about this particular new rule?
Well, I thought it was interesting that Colin Farrell would be in Total Recall in 9 years, so full circle.
Oh wow, okay. And that's how you do a Herald.
But also, the thing he leans into the most at the very end of it was like the button on the whole thing for me. Because the thing that he ends the whole episode with is the hooker with no heart from Casino.
Oh, yeah.
So he ends it with some misogyny.
It also is like, it's like, is that what you took from that character in Casino? You were like, oh, this awful bitch destroying men. And it's like, I feel like her whole journey is just being used by these two parallel guys in different but exactly the same ways.
Yeah.
Until she's got, and then finally used up by like a group of bikers or whatever before she ODs in a hallway. Like, that's like... that is one of like the great movie performances, I think. I think she's so incredible in that movie and that character is so great. And to reduce it to the hooker without a heart of gold is like great, man. I thought you were going to say He says, not only have we ruined movies, we've ruined our kids by making everything about them. And the absolute audacity for a baby boomer to say something like that. Like, the most entitled freak generation.
A guy who only lights up when he talks about the Beatles.
Is only interested in things he likes. Doesn't care about anything he doesn't like.
Baseball, the Beatles, all shit he liked as a child.
Weed, like
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah.
Like this guy's life, the only difference, if he were a guy who painted houses in a beach town, the only difference in his life would be the size of his house and how famous his friends are.
That's funny. He hates children the way that a 4-year-old only child hates the pregnant mom's new baby that's coming. Every child coming into the world is competition for him and his status as baby.
Yeah, he's upset that he's not baby anymore.
He misses being baby.
A generation of people so entitled that Gen X specifically became a generation of losers who intentionally do not draw attention to themselves in the most embarrassing. Like that's how entitled you all were. Look what you did to your children. Or if they were a little older when they had them, they came out like me, and we're fucked up too.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that spin on it, but that is why they are, and myself included, I'm at the tail end of it, specifically bad at social media.
He's too young to be talking like this at this time.
Like, I can't imagine being like, why is everything for kids in 2 years? Because that's what makes money, man. Like, what do you want? People want to take their kids to shit.
Yeah, to be like, everything is about kids these days, as a part of your broader complaint that everything is not marketed specifically towards you.
Yes. That's the issue. That's it, though. Everything, he's so narcissistic that his idea of what he likes or doesn't like politically is specific to him and his needs, to the point that you're going to have episodes coming up where he shuts down the whole show to talk about zoning for his shed. And I wish that I was fucking kidding.
When?
He does it
When?
2021 or 2020. He does like a 4-part thing where the whole show shuts down and he's like, back to my shed.
Okay, I gotta find these.
I'm not the people that know what if you know, you know. But he will people like there's shit going on in the world, and he has this running clock of how long it's been since the city of Malibu addressed his shed.
So that's such a better example. I remember specifically when he really gets into trans stuff, and before he becomes like really explicitly transphobic, back when he's just like, the Democrats, they're going to lose the election focusing on this identity politics stuff, this woke stuff. They're going to lose. They're going to get killed in 2022 talking about trans stuff. Nobody wants to hear about this. And then famously, the Democrats did not get crushed in 2022. If it weren't for fucking the incompetent New York State Democrats, they would have maintained control of Congress. And like, he's never reckoned with that. He has never looked at that and been like, am I just assuming everybody else feels the exact same way about things that I do? Because clearly he's tired of trans stuff. He doesn't want to talk about trans stuff.
Yeah.
Trans issues makes him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so
he thinks men are going to get replaced.
Because he says it so earnestly, like, what are we going to do? They don't make movies for us anymore, and they don't even need our sperm anymore. What about baby?
That's interesting. Because he doesn't even want kids. Like, famously, he doesn't want kids. But
Dude, what the fuck does he give a fuck about how people are having kids? He doesn't want them.
Because he's baby.
He
you
wants
can
to
just
know.
make more baby if I'm not there?
Then we go to new rules. New thing on the show, I'm making my guests do the thing with me. So before we get to it, we both have to go ba 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 ba. Please, Rachel.
Oh yeah.
Ba 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 ba. Okay, great.
Yeah.
New rule number 1. Any notes you have? I'm gonna go through them. Any notes you have, feel free to interject after the new rule. New rule.
No more celebrating gastric bypass.
Thoughts?
Well, if they weren't getting gastric bypass, Bill would be shaming them for being fat, so he has to pick a lane.
Yeah, it's like, not only does he demand people be thin, but they have to be thin. They have to have gotten thin the specific way he demands, I guess.
Yes.
I wonder if it's not actually about people's weight and it's something weirder he has deep down inside. New rule.
New rule. Lesbian kisses aren't risque. They're desperate cries for attention.
There's a lot to unpack here. Your thoughts?
I think if we're gonna reduce like women doing shock value anything to needing attention, then I guess Jackass is a show of men who need attention.
I mean, yeah, I think that's actually fair. I mean, listen, you know, they love to talk about how gay Jackass is. I'll say during this, at one point, he says there are 3 reasons why chicks kiss, and none of the 3 reasons are they're gay.
Well,
this whole new rule doesn't acknowledge actual lesbians. It entirely exists within the framework that lesbianism is done as experimentation or as a cry for attention. He doesn't acknowledge the existence of the mythical lesbian.
Well, lesbians don't exist to Bill, so of course he can't. How can he acknowledge something he cannot see?
Obviously, it is talked about a lot how he cannot think of anything through anyone else's perspective, which actually comes up in the next one too. But this is the most egregious, like, to not even stop and think. Like, and of the 3 reasons, it would have been funnier if the third one was, if he's like, oh, because they want attention at a bar, because they think they're, you know, they need to pass an exam and didn't study for it, or if they're actually gay. You know, gay people are real. Like, it's an opportunity to do the rhythm of like ba ba ba. Like the third one, the first 2 are like they don't mean it. They're just trying to get something out of it, and then of course because they're gay, because that's real. You can do the third one then with a different tone because it's the punchline, which you say differently than the setup traditionally.
That goes against what I think are the like key tenets of the show, which is that Bill does one voice, he laughs in the setup every time, and he follows no rules of comedy. That's the third rule, is that he will not follow any rule of comedy.
Dude, the number of times on this show I have seen him do two examples of a thing. He'll be like, oh, that does 2 funny examples. And it's like, my God, the man won't even acknowledge the rule of 3. This is almost art. It's so bafflingly creative.
Yes.
Okay, new rule.
Stop whining about gas prices.
I said, who is this punching at? You buy gas, Bill. Like, you drive your car. It's not punching at bus riders. It's punching at people who want to drive their cars but cannot afford to.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted.
The people, it's like, yeah, there are people who, and yeah, his whole thing is like, why don't you try walking? And it's like, buddy, this country was specifically built to not be walkable. Like, your issue here is with the infrastructure of America, like the transportation infrastructure of America. It's not like lots of people who can afford the gas whine about the price of gas, but there are also people who need to drive for their livelihood or to get to work because there are no other options, who are like, I'm losing all my paycheck or most of my paycheck to fucking gas.
It feels like leftover resentment from the gastric bypass new rule, which is like, you're fucking fat. You're going to go drive to Del Taco that's 2 blocks down the street.
Yeah, he is a health freak.
He also mentioned something about, I think this is what you were saying, where it's like people have to lose weight in the way Bill Maher wants you to. And so there's something about like self-control there, right? And to me, I'm like, if we're arguing about self-control, Bill Maher, you wouldn't have done the show for 22 seasons.
Yeah, he would have found something else, because it doesn't. I've seen some of the new episodes. He does not give a fuck about this fucking show. New rule.
If you're over 12 and you got excited this week about Mars, you need a girlfriend.
So I would say both the lesbian kisses, I forgot to give that the misogyny.
Cringe.
We all know the sting. This one I think would also apply for that, because at no point during this does he acknowledge that like women are also interested in science. It is entirely framed about only men could have been excited about Mars passing closer to Earth than it had in 60,000 years. This is the bit where he 3 different times looks over at the panel unbelievably smugly after one of his punchlines.
This was the longest walk to I don't know where. I truly got lost because I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no electricity in Rochester. So I don't know if there's
a blackout a couple weeks ago.
Okay, a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Weeks ago, Will, still not relevant now.
Yeah, he would just assume people would remember, because he'd be like, well, people watch this show every week, so they'd remember. And
they take notes diligently.
Like, this one, he is smug about a Ted Nugent being racist joke, smug about another joke I didn't see, and then the last one is a Fox News joke where he like specifically looks at like Dennis. He looks at his panel like, I got you guys. And then he ends it with a joke. It's something like, if you want to see an alien that bad, just drive by a Home Depot at 7:30 in the morning and hire one to build you a deck in your backyard. And during that joke, he laughs twice.
Mm-hmm.
Twice he laughs during that joke.
He's a proud man.
Twice during that joke. He fucks
Well,
it up
because
completely.
he did one of his rules, which is he puns the word alien. You know he's horny for a pun.
Mhm.
That's his only form of comedy. And then laughing at his own setups is the other part. And we can't expect a third.
And laughs. The joke's so good in his brain, he starts laughing before he starts it. Like, thinking about starting it makes him laugh. My big thing in this new rule is at one point he says,
Look, I don't blame scientists for wanting to find life on other planets. That's what geeks do.
and it's like, you're a fucking geek, man.
Yeah.
You're a fucking geek. Like, he's like,
They figure women on Earth won't fuck me. Maybe the ones on Zorkon will.
you get pussy because you are rich and famous. Like, let's not pretend like it's for any other reason.
Well, it's for his perfect politics. Well, of course.
He is like 5'6". He got bullied all through school. He looks like a nerd. He's a little guy. Like,
yeah.
And this guy's going to be like, look at these fucking geeks. There are a lot of scientists who could beat the absolute shit out of Bill Maher.
100%.
And again, no mention of women who might have been excited about the comet.
No.
I'll say it's appropriate. As we've been recording, your apartment has gotten darker and darker over the Zoom.
Oh, am I in the dark? Perfect.
Which is what the effect the show tends to have on people. Although you've maintained the same level throughout. Do you have any thoughts on the last new rule or new rules in general?
Well, because he also tries to wedge in something about global warming in the like quote unquote punchline of this extended bit. And that's where I was like, yeah, the Fox News bit. And I go, this is where I just think you have a word bank that you needed to get through before the episode was done. Because why are you wedging that in there? We've not talked about this. It's not been a topic tonight. It's just something, again, that you try to go, and I'm going to prove my little point.
The new rules, the last new rule where he does the kind of essay or monologue, it can get very windy to where when he gets back to the start point for the end, you're like, oh, right, that's what this was about.
No.
And then we go to, of course, new rules. I'm considering making the guest do the new Okay, great. So that's how I'm going to intro new rules from now on. The first new rule, I'll go through them, and if you have any thoughts.
Okay.
So first new rule.
New rule number 1, no more cell phones in movie theaters.
Okay, I agree. But how can you make this racist?
Yeah, the big punchline is about, no, not the middle punchline is about black people yelling at the screen during movies. I will give this one credit for at least that is a rule. That is phrased like a rule.
It is a rule. You have to put it in your asshole.
Also, I mean, a part of it is like, I have never been in a movie theater that is majority black people. I've just experienced people. If you're watching like a horror movie, I've just experienced people yelling during movies. And I don't know if Bill Maher would try to claim that's cultural appropriation. But like, also though, like when I saw Paranormal Activity, people were yelling out a lot during it. And I didn't turn around to be like, what is the race of the person who just said that? Like,
Bill Maher goes to movies a lot where it's all black people, and they're like, my demographic is black.
So I'll say, his
I'm one of the blacks, as he would say.
When I saw Widows, it was a pretty empty theater, but there was like a long line of like late middle-aged black women sitting behind us. And when Cynthia Erivo slapped Viola Davis during that movie, that is the loudest gasp I have ever heard in my entire life. Those women could not believe what they just saw. So the second one is not a rule.
New rule, stop patting ourselves on the back over the blackout.
I don't know.
There were big blackouts on the East Coast. He was talking about it on the last episode. There was like a lot of blackouts on the East Coast. And I guess people were being like, hey, we did a great job. And his whole thing is like,
yeah, you're supposed to. Okay.
first of all, any time I hear a joke like that, it just reminds me of the Chris Rock, I take care of my kids.
Oh,
You're
yes,
supposed
yes,
to,
yes.
you dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's not a rule. A little rule correction. It could be no or no more patting ourselves on the back over the fucking blackout. Right there. Fixes it into a rule. Yeah, that's one of those ones where you're like, okay, this is like...
Right. That's nothing. It's nothing.
It's a personal preference.
Yeah.
Third new rule.
New rule. Enough with the flash mobs.
Okay, so here's my question. Fine, but how do you turn this into a rape joke, Bill?
He's got a gift, you know?
It's like it's like a choose your own adventure where the answer is rape every time for Bill Maher.
Or a Mad
hilarious rape.
So this show is fucking my brain up because I don't even remember what you're talking about from this one.
13-year-old girls at a motel.
Oh yes, right. Yes.
And in the context of everything else, maybe like in a vacuum, you're like a creep, like or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, his joke is it's because he's like.
But I guess this is what you do with the internet when you can't find any 13-year-old girls who'll meet you at a motel.
But like we've already had 27 rape jokes, so that was just another. Like my brain is just like, why?
Yeah.
Why is that hilarious?
That's it too, man. That's like the whole thing. It's like you just wreck your whole deal when you just like make people like roll their eyes and be like, Jesus Christ, again? You're even taking the like I'm a little shithead joy out of it by just numbing people into it. You don't even then get the satisfaction of being like, aren't I bad? And it's like, no, you keep doing this.
Right,
It's
like,
not bad anymore. I'm just like annoyed.
I would see kids in college like their books were all highlighted, and it's just like then nothing's highlighted. Do you know what I mean? Like if everything is rape.
Yeah, just read the book. Like,
right.
You're not taking notes anymore. Also, what distracted me in this joke, is when he goes, flash mobs are fight clubs for pussies. And when he said that, I was like, this feels like a classic joke where you hit the structure of a joke and you put in references that make it sound like a joke. But then when you think about it, you're like, could you elaborate on that? Because I don't really understand how flash mobs are fight. I guess it's just a club for pussies.
It's not like a fight club.
No, he's just saying it's a club for pussies is his thing.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's comparing two things.
It's like you're not meeting in secret. You're not getting out like male rage. You're not satirical. It's just a club. It's just a club is what he's saying.
I remember somebody saying to me that the laziest jokes are, that's like this. And I remember like, and I think about it every time I almost write something like that. Like, that'd be like this.
Final new rule.
And finally, new rule. Somebody make a movie I want to go out and see.
So again, not a rule. Before I get to your thoughts on this one, I want to brainstorm. How would you make this an actual rule?
Yeah,
I made an attempt at it because this is a really
you wanted to
cumbersome one.
finish the
like no, just how do you make somebody make a movie I want to go out and see? That's not a rule. That's not being expressed the way you would express a rule.
Okay.
So my best attempt at it would be new rule: 10% of all new movies must be made for people who aren't idiots. That's my Bill Maher.
That's a good. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Like that's a rule. Like put in the work.
Or
put in the
aren't
fucking effort.
children. You would have
Yes,
loved
like-
it leaning into that.
And I just talked about this with Mike. You have a full week to write this. There's so little writing on this show.
And finally, new rule. At least one movie a week has to be for adults and not children. Okay?
Great. Like
that's a rule.
That's a rule. If you
Yeah.
put that in a rule book for people who made movies, they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck, we got to make one of these. This is the most I'm an old man rule of just him being like, these movies are dumb and they're loud. One movie, he's like, I saw Bad Boys 2, and I was like, Bad Boys 2?
Everyone loves that movie.
It's incredible. When he's like, the THX intro was the only part of the plot that made sense. It's like, who cares?
When's the last time you heard anyone say anything but glowing reviews for Bad Boys 2?
And like at the time, people were like, really stupid movie, but a lot of fun. Also insane. And he's complaining where he's like, there are no movies. He's like, I know it's summer. And right there, it's like, yeah, it's summer. that's when all the dumb movies come out, especially in 2003. So it's late August when he says this.
Yeah.
Not but 1.5 months later, in October, you have both Mystic River and Kill Bill Volume 1. So a new Tarantino movie.
The day after the Steve Bartman baseball game where this guy blows it for the Cubs, I went and saw Kill Bill Volume 1 to make myself feel better.
The Cubs blew it for the Cubs, man.
It's an embarrassing time period. And just in culture. Yeah.
There was in Game 6 when the Flames were in the Stanley Cup Finals, Martin Jelena should have gotten a goal in the first period. Later they looked at replays and the puck crossed the line and it should have counted, and everybody was like, we should have won the Stanley Cup. And it's like, guys, there were 2.5 more periods after that. Do you think the Tampa Bay Lightning were just going to be like, they got us, let's fucking give it up? They clearly weren't, because they fucking won. And then, yes, like you said, in December there's Return of the King. Also that summer, Pirates of the Caribbean came out, which is like dumb and too long, but like everybody loved fucking Curse of the Black
Out
Pearl.
of morbid curiosity, I watched Tarantino on Club Random, and he did kind of punt. He hates anything that's for kids. He hates any movie that's...
Oh, Bill Maher does?
Bill Maher does,
Yeah, because there's the clip where Tarantino's like, the perfect trilogy is Toy Story 1 through 3.
Right. He's like, I can't watch 4 because you completed the story. It's like perfect. And he's like, what's that?
The cartoon?
Yeah.
And Tarantino's like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tarantino watches every movie that's ever been made.
Right.
So this guy clearly went to the movies and he didn't see anything he wanted to see. And so he showed up on Monday and he was like, we're closing New Rules, complaining about how all movies are shit these days.
But he says a thing in this. Oh, man. There is an episode of Sopranos where Tony dismisses Anthony by saying, like, oh, these kids want DVDs. And, like, I always thought that was so fucking... I rewatched it during COVID. In this one, Bill Maher, like, tops him. And he's just like, the kids you got to do it for kids because they get DVDs and read Maxim magazine. And I'm like, this is a guy who wants to be Hugh Hefner as much as he wants to be Johnny Carson. So, like, you're mad about... Maxim, like that's right up your alley, pal.
So there's more we'll get. So I'm now unbelievably annoyed, and I'm doing an even deeper dive. Just thinking. So Open Range came out on August 15th. This fucking asshole loves westerns. A week before this episode came out, Open Range came out. Well, the Fighting Temptations, that was bad. Nobody liked that. Like they're.
It wasn't a great year,
dude. Lost in Translation.
September
12th. September 12th. 2 weeks from then is coming out. The Italian Job was a couple months earlier. That was not smart, but it wasn't as dumb.
But here's the thing. He also is very famous for every year when the Oscars would come out and be like, why do we have these serious movies?
Fuck, man. Can this guy just...
He doesn't know what he wants. No.
Can this guy just think a thing and then hold on to it?
No, every year he's like, who's going to watch the Oscars? What, are you going to watch the one about the guy in the concentration camp with AIDS? And it's like, so you don't want a kids movie or like a very serious movie. Like, what do you want?
28 days later, June 27th. It was a month or 2 months earlier. He had lots of shit. There's lots of shit that, again.
So Harry Potter, is that what he's specifically mad about?
No, I think it might be like, it's probably like Pirates of the Caribbean. I think Finding Nemo might have come out recently. Okay. That was like one of the big movies of that year.
And he definitely thinks that's like a cartoon for children.
I believe he went to the movies once a couple days earlier and was like, what the fuck?
Well, in the context of this, the person he's most mad about is Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Colin Farrell's the one guy who he says, I don't want to see movies with a cartoon bunny or Colin Farrell.
Like that, so he's mad at Minority Report? Or is he mad about Phone Booth? Like, what are you mad about?
Also, were movies good in the 90s and 80s? I don't remember that. Like, movies got stupid in the 1980s. Famously, the 90s, all the good movies in the 90s were
1999.
He's like, I'm not some asshole with a ponytail who wants to sit through a German language. And it's like, okay, then what do you want? Because movies in the 90s were bad too. You had like Pulp Fiction would have been the one movie I can think of that you would have really liked.
Fight Club.
Yeah, fight guy who wouldn't get Fight Club. And then he, towards the end, do you have anything else about this particular new rule?
Well, I thought it was interesting that Colin Farrell would be in Total Recall in 9 years, so full circle.
Oh wow, okay. And that's how you do a Herald.
But also, the thing he leaned into the most at the very end of it was like the button on the whole thing for me. Because the thing that he ends the whole episode with is the hooker with no heart from Casino.
Oh, yeah.
So he ends it with some misogyny.
It also is like, it's like, is that what you took from that character in Casino? You were like, oh, this awful bitch destroying men. And it's like, I feel like her whole journey is just being used by these two parallel guys in different but exactly the same ways.
Yeah.
Until she's got, and then finally used up by like a group of bikers or whatever before she ODs in a hallway. Like, that's like, that is one of like the great movie performances, I think. I think she's so incredible in that movie and that character's so great, and to reduce it to the hooker without a heart of gold is like great, man. I thought you were going to say, he says, not only have we ruined movies, we've ruined our kids by making everything about them. And the absolute audacity for a baby boomer to say something like that. Like, the most entitled freak generation.
A guy who only lights up when he talks about the Beatles.
Is only interested in things he likes. Doesn't care about anything he doesn't like.
Baseball, the Beatles, all shit he liked as a child.
Weed, like this guy.
Yeah.
Like this guy's life, the only difference, if he were a guy who painted houses in a beach town, the only difference in his life would be the size of his house and how famous his friends are.
That's funny. He hates children the way that a 4-year-old only child hates the pregnant mom's new baby that's coming. Every child coming into the world is competition for him and his status as baby.
Yeah, he's upset that he's not baby anymore.
He misses being baby.
A generation of people so entitled that Gen X specifically became a generation of losers who intentionally do not draw attention to themselves in the most embarrassing, like that's how entitled you all were. Look what you did to your children. Or if they were a little older when they had them, they came out like me, and we're fucked up too.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that spin on it, but that is why they are, and myself included, I'm at the tail end of it, specifically bad at social media.
He's too young to be talking like this at this time.
Like, I can't imagine being like, why is everything for kids in 2 years? Because that's what makes money, man. Like, what do you want? People want to take their kids to shit.
Yeah, to be like, everything is about kids these days, as a part of your broader complaint that everything is not marketed specifically towards you.
Yes, that's the issue. Though that's it though. Everything, he's so narcissistic that his idea of what he likes or doesn't like politically is specific to him and his needs, to the point that you're going to have episodes coming up where he shuts down the whole show to talk about zoning for his shed. And I wish that I was fucking kidding.
When?
He does it
When?
2021 or 2020. He does like a 4-part thing where the whole show shuts down and he's like, back to my shed.
Okay, I gotta find these.
The people that know what if you know, you know. But he will, people, like, there's shit going on in the world, and he has this running clock of how long it's been since the city of Malibu addressed his shed.
So that's such a better example. I remember specifically when he really gets into trans stuff, and before he becomes like really explicitly transphobic, back when he's just like, the Democrats, they're going to lose the election focusing on this identity politics stuff, this woke stuff. They're going to lose. They're going to get killed in 2022 talking about trans stuff. Nobody wants to hear about this. And then famously, the Democrats did not get crushed in 2022. If it weren't for fucking the incompetent New York State Democrats, they would have maintained control of Congress. And like, he's never reckoned with that. He has never looked at that and been like, am I just assuming everybody else feels the exact same way about things that I do? Because clearly he's tired of trans stuff. He doesn't want to talk about trans stuff.
Yeah.
Trans issues makes him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so
he thinks men are going to get replaced.
Because he says it so earnestly, like, what are we going to do? They don't make movies for us anymore, and they don't even need our sperm anymore. What about baby?
That's interesting. Because he doesn't even want kids. Like, famously, he doesn't want kids. But
Dude, what the fuck does he give a fuck about how people are having kids? He doesn't want them.
Because he's baby.
He
You
wants
can just make more baby if I'm not there?
Then we go to new rules, new thing on the show. I'm making my guests do the thing with me. So before we get to it, we both have to go ba 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 ba. Please, Rachel.
Oh yeah.
Ba 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 ba. Okay, great.
Yeah.
New rule number 1. Any notes you have? I'm gonna go through them. Any notes you have, feel free to interject after the new rule. New rule.
No more celebrating gastric bypass.
Thoughts?
Well, if they weren't getting gastric bypass, Bill would be shaming them for being fat, so he has to pick a lane.
Yeah, it's like not only does he demand people be thin, but they have to be thin. They have to have gotten thin the specific way he demands, I guess.
Yes.
I wonder if it's not actually about people's weight and it's something weirder he has deep down inside. New rule.
New rule. Lesbian kisses aren't risque. They're desperate cries for attention.
There's a lot to unpack here. Your thoughts?
I think if we're gonna reduce like women doing shock value anything to needing attention, then I guess Jackass is a show of men who need attention.
I mean, yeah, I think that's actually fair. I mean, listen, they love to talk about how gay Jackass is. I'll say during this, at one point, he says there are 3 reasons why chicks kiss, and none of the 3 reasons are they're gay.
Well,
this whole new rule doesn't acknowledge actual lesbians. It entirely exists within the framework that lesbianism is done as experimentation or as a cry for attention. He doesn't acknowledge the existence of the mythical lesbian.
Well, lesbians don't exist to Bill, so of course he can't. How can he acknowledge something he cannot see?
Obviously, it is talked about a lot how he cannot think of anything through anyone else's perspective, which actually comes up in the next one too. But this is the most egregious, like, to not even stop and think, like, and of the 3 reasons, it would have been funnier if the third one was, if he's like, oh, because they want attention at a bar, because they think they're, they need to pass an exam and didn't study for it, or if they're actually gay. Gay people are real. Like, it's an opportunity to do the rhythm of like ba ba ba. Like the third one, the first 2 are like they don't mean it. They're just trying to get something out of it, and then of course because they're gay, because that's real. You can do the third one then with a different tone because it's the punchline, which you say differently than the setup traditionally.
That goes against what I think are the like key tenets of the show, which is that Bill does one voice, he laughs in the setup every time, and he follows no rules of comedy. That's the third rule, is that he will not follow any rule of comedy.
Dude, the number of times on this show I have seen him do two examples of a thing. He'll be like, oh, that does 2 funny examples. And it's like, my God, the man won't even acknowledge the rule of 3. This is almost art. It's so bafflingly creative.
Yes.
Okay, new rule.
Stop whining about gas prices.
I said, who is this punching at? You buy gas, Bill. Like, you drive your car. It's not punching at bus riders. It's punching at people who want to drive their cars but cannot afford to.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted.
The people, it's like, there are people who, and his whole thing is like, why don't you try walking? And it's like, buddy, this country was specifically built to not be walkable. Like, your issue here is with the infrastructure of America, like the transportation infrastructure of America. It's not like lots of people who can afford the gas whine about the price of gas, but there are also people who need to drive for their livelihood or to get to work because there are no other options, who are like, I'm losing all my paycheck or most of my paycheck to fucking gas.
It feels like leftover resentment from the gastric bypass new rule, which is like, you're fucking fat. You're going to go drive to Del Taco that's 2 blocks down the street.
Yeah, he is a health freak.
He also mentioned something about, I think this is what you were saying, where it's like people have to lose weight in the way Bill Maher wants you to. And so there's something about like self-control there, right? And to me, I'm like, if we're arguing about self-control, Bill Maher, you wouldn't have done the show for 22 seasons.
Yeah, he would have found something else, because it doesn't. I've seen some of the new episodes. He does not give a fuck about this fucking show. New rule.
If you're over 12 and you got excited this week about Mars, you need a girlfriend.
So I would say both the lesbian kisses, I forgot to give that the misogyny.
Cringe.
We all know the sting. This one I think would also apply for that, because at no point during this does he acknowledge that like women are also interested in science. It is entirely framed about only men could have been excited about Mars passing closer to Earth than it had in 60,000 years. This is the bit where he 3 different times looks over at the panel unbelievably smugly after one of his punchlines.
This was the longest walk to I don't know where. I truly got lost because I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no electricity in Rochester. So I don't know if there's
a blackout a couple weeks ago.
Okay, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Weeks ago, Will, still not relevant now.
Yeah, he would just assume people would remember, because he'd be like, well, people watch this show every week, so they'd remember. And
They take notes diligently.
like this one, he is smug about a Ted Nugent being racist joke, smug about another joke I didn't see, and then the last one is a Fox News joke where he like specifically looks at like Dennis. He looks at his panel like, I got you guys. And then he ends it with a joke. It's something like, if you want to see an alien that bad, just drive by a Home Depot at 7:30 in the morning and hire one to build you a deck in your backyard. And during that joke, he laughs twice.
Mm-hmm.
Twice he laughs during that joke.
He's a proud man.
Twice during that joke. He fucks
Well,
it up
because
completely.
he did one of his rules, which is he puns the word alien. You know he's horny for a pun.
Mhm.
That's his only form of comedy. And then laughing at his own setups is the other part. And we can't expect a third.
And laughs. The joke's so good in his brain, he starts laughing before he starts it. Like, thinking about starting it makes him laugh. My big thing in this new rule is at one point he says,
Look, I don't blame scientists for wanting to find life on other planets. That's what geeks do.
and it's like, you're a fucking geek, man.
Yeah.
You're a fucking geek. Like, he's like,
They figure women on Earth won't fuck me. Maybe the ones on Zorkon will.
you get pussy because you are rich and famous. Like, let's not pretend like it's for any other reason.
Well, it's for his perfect politics. Well, of course.
He is like 5'6". He got bullied all through school. He looks like a nerd. He's a little guy. Like,
yeah.
And this guy's going to be like, look at these fucking geeks. There are a lot of scientists who could beat the absolute shit out of Bill Maher.
100%.
And again, no mention of women who might have been excited about the comet.
No.
I'll say it's appropriate. As we've been recording, your apartment has gotten darker and darker over the Zoom.
Oh, am I in the dark? Perfect.
Which is what the effect the show tends to have on people. Although you've maintained the same level throughout. Do you have any thoughts on the last new rule or new rules in general?
Well, because he also tries to wedge in something about global warming in the like quote unquote punchline of this extended bit. And that's where I was like, yeah, the Fox News bit. And I go, this is where I just think you have a word bank that you needed to get through before the episode was done. Because why are you wedging that in there? We've not talked about this. It's not been a topic tonight. It's just something, again, that you try to go, and I'm going to prove my little point.
The new rules, the last new rule where he does the kind of essay or monologue, it can get very windy to where when he gets back to the start point for the end, you're like, oh, right, that's what this was about.
No.
So then we go into new rules.
All right, new rule.
Dumbass blew out his own microphone. Good job, Bill.
Stop mourning the Volkswagen bug.
Okay, here's the thing about this new rule. Not particularly funny, but I do think it is broadly true. This was the original VW bug before they brought it back. And he essentially just says, stop mourning it. The only people who should be mourning it are hippies and Hitler's relatives that were still getting a royalty check. Okay, that all works. It's like I said, it's not particularly funny. People don't laugh much, but yeah, it's a successful new rule. Great job, Bill. Great job, Bill Maher. I don't want to ever just be referring to him as Bill, because that would denote a level of familiarity that would make me uncomfortable, even if I'm talking about him at least once, often multiple times per week.
New rule. country music stars can't be authors.
Okay, this is another one. It bombs. It's just sort of, he keeps repeating the same kind of note about like, oh, hillbillies and just, I think it's Charlie Daniels just writing about the flag, how great the flag is. Makes me want to burn the flag. Great, very good.
New rule: call things what they are.
Okay, so this would normally just be an example of just one of his normal, like, who cares, man? This is just like the kind of thing where it's like, all right, well, who gives a shit? But listen to his call things what his examples for this one.
If your morning coffee contains crushed ice, whipped cream, and caramel, it's a milkshake.
So here's why I would argue it's not a milkshake, because you listed neither milk nor ice cream in your list of ingredients. The two key ingredients for a milkshake, not even milk, the keyest ingredient, because that's in the name. So example 1, swing and a miss. Did you hear that fucking lip smack? Oh my God, listen to this. Sir, you are on television.
Same as if you cook your cocaine on a spoon and smoke it. You're not freebasing, you're a crackhead.
Crack is Coke made with water and usually baking soda. You're not doing crack. You're not a cokehead if you're freebasing, or you're not a crackhead if you're freebasing cocaine. You're a cokehead. Crack is a thing. Once again, he doesn't know the ingredients of the thing he's saying somebody is partaking in. Now, this last one is obviously the worst one.
And if you go down on your husband after he gives you a new fur coat, you're not celebrating your anniversary, you're a, oh, never mind.
This man hates women. He hates them. It's crazy how much he hates them. This, like, the very act of receiving a gift makes you a quote-unquote prostitute. Well, I guess he said, obviously he was going to say whore. But like, and again, as always, sex work is fine. I don't mind if that's your job. But here it's not meant as like, well, that's actually her job. He's using it in the derogatory manner that if you ever receive a nice gift from your husband, you are only into him for his money. That's the only reason, and you're sucking him off because it's strictly a transaction. He's disgusting, and he's an idiot too. This thing of like guys who supposedly love sex and love to like fuck women, who are disgusted by the idea of women having sex with, like, all they want to do is insult them for it. It's like, this guy is rancid, man. He's a really bad person. This is a bad show hosted by a bad person. And like, whatever. I hope at this point the writers of this shit are like, well, I'd obviously never write anything like that now, because this is reprehensible. Like, and again, it just makes no sense. It's like the milkshake. It's like the crack. Like, it's not transactional if you're just excited to get a nice gift, so you show your partner a good time. And of course, it's only a wife. A man could never be transactional with a woman. It's not pathetic the other way, where a guy, only has value because he has money. He's more pathetic, in my opinion. The guy in this example who's going to live a lie and pretend like his wife gives a fuck about him when she just wants nice stuff. He's the sadder figure in this. At least she's getting the stuff. But it doesn't sound like a happy home life. Okay, here's the next one.
And finally, new rule. Stop pretending that viruses on the internet are interrupting anything important.
Okay, so this is a weird one. And obviously his angle is like, well, only nerds are on the internet. Nothing important is happening. But remember, this is 2003. E-commerce really took off. It was invented in like the late 70s, the ability to do it. But e-commerce was 94, 95. That was Amazon originally as a bookseller. That was when eBay was created. You could do e-banking. Like, very important things were going on in the internet, and very important information was stored on the internet. And famously, viruses were and are used to get that information. So this is like the ravings of a demented old man who's only 47, but who still thinks that the internet is just like geeks playing chess over email. But I'm going to end up playing the entire new rules here, a lot of this one as well. Listen to this fucking shit.
Internet got big by exploiting an unmet need in the marketplace. A more efficient way to transmit both junk mail and pictures of busty teenagers having unprotected anal sex.
Listen to that fucking bomb. Listen to how hard this joke fucking eats shit.
Unprotected anal sex.
And I mean, deservedly so, but like, to make that joke and get nothing but like, oh, and then a couple disgusting perverts in the audience trying to get an applause break going.
The generation that created the internet, of course, likes to think of it as history's crowning technology, but it's really just a typewriter crossed with a TV remote. Don't like the channel you're watching? Well, there are 5 trillion more.
I mean, what a reach. What a stupid observation that is clearly false and moronic and embarrassing. Like that sounds embarrassing. That's some old. It sounds like fucking Grandpa Simpson. He sounds like Grandpa Simpson being like, well, the internet's just a typewriter with a phone connected to it. I swear to God, the Simpsons have had Grandpa Simpson make that joke. Maybe not about the internet, but definitely about something in that exact same cadence. Jesus fucking Christ. This guy's 47 years old and he talks like Grandpa Simpson from the titular Simpsons.
And they're all run by a co-ed named Lucy who claims she and her roommates have set up a shower cam for kicks.
That was the second half of the joke that started with the last thing. But what is this guy able to not think about young women having sex or being sexual for more than 5 minutes? He's like incapable of it. Like, hey man, is something up? Is something up with this guy? Like, people make a lot of jokes on the show and I cut them out because that they feel libelous. But like, what is this shit? He's always talking about this. Listen, okay, fuck it. Listen to this.
But really, the internet is good for 2 things: stealing music and meeting 13-year-old girls.
Like, what is that? How many times during this episode did this guy talk about young girl, 13-year-old girls, young women? I mean, this man must jack off before the show. He has to. They have to, if at gunpoint, if that's what it takes, force this man to jack off before the show and before finalizing the script for the show as well. Because this is the work of a horny pervert at his absolute horniest. There's no other explanation for why so much of this show is about fucking young women, young girls fucking, being nude, showering. Like, this is a crazy. He didn't talk about, in this whole segment, he does nothing about the internet being nerdy. It's just about porn and being a pedophile. This shit is so suspect. Look, I'm not implying anything. All I'm implying is that this guy needs to not be such a fucking horny freak, and not that he can do anything about it now. So there are only 3 new rules this week. The first one is, to intro new rules, I make the guest do the theme with me. The bup 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 bup. Sam, you got to bup 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 bup.
I don't think I do.
Bup 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 bup. Okay, well, I'm going to digitally alter my voice until it sounds like you, and then throw it on there. So, first new rule is...
All right, first new rule. Even if you miss home really bad, don't mail yourself there.
And it's about the guy who shipped himself to Texas. And it's like him saying that, I was like, well, first of all, that's not a new rule. It's already a rule. You're not allowed to ship yourself somewhere.
Also, my thought was like, he just said the headline a little different. That's not a joke. That's not
when he's
how
like,
is this universally applicable?
When he's like, when it comes to traveling home for the holidays, think outside the box. And the crowd is kind of like, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't ship yourself. You're right. That's why it's already against the law.
And it's like, it was, and also that was unconventional thinking. So it was outside the box. So that's in direct contradiction to what your punchline was. Anyway, the joke math is really bad, again, thematically.
And again, just like, he does. And he also doesn't say, I don't know, maybe it was a big enough story, but the crowd doesn't really laugh at all to a degree where I'm like, I don't know that this story was as big a thing as he thinks it. Like when your job is to write jokes about the news, I think you sometimes have a disconnect from the fact that not everyone is going through every single newspaper every single day looking for funny news stories.
Yeah, looking through the crazy news part of Huffington Post, which is what I think they're doing at this time.
So then the second one is
new rule: Jewish people have to start fucking.
And this was the one where, so he's like,
the Jewish population in America dropped 5% in the last decade.
And initially you're like, okay, this is a little like eugenics-y, racial supremacist, but whatever. You know, it's also different. It's like, look, it's different if you are famously an ethnic group that has been persecuted and annihilated. But then he starts doing jokes like,
which may explain why this country's finances have gone to shit.
There aren't enough Jews around. And then he's like,
breed, you sons of Abraham, breed. We need you. Israel needs you. Kobe Bryant, Robert Blake, and Phil Spector need you.
Clearly in the sense of like, well, they need lawyers. These guys who murdered their wives and girlfriends. And then at the end, he goes,
without Jews.
This is a direct quote. I'm going to put nobody get mad at me. I'm going to put the clip in.
Without Jews, who's going to write all those sitcoms about blacks and Hispanics?
And at that point, I'm like, did the KKK write this new rule? It is now getting into a point where it sounds like a conspiracy theorist being like, all these Jew lawyers defending woman killers and writing our television and forcing us to watch shows about blacks and Hispanics. Literally, a racist would say these same things.
It is the thinnest premise that seems pro to get to the most racist series of punchlines.
Like, yes, it's like, I don't care if your entire writer's room is Jewish and this is the way you guys joke around with each other. It crosses over into like, oh, friendly ribbing amongst ourselves, into being like, this is an anti-Semitic bit you have written here that truly sounds like the ravings of an American conspiracy theorist. Like, this is the kind of stuff that is now allowed since Elon Musk bought Twitter. You can now post this kind of stuff on Twitter.
This is everyone's replies.
Yes, and you would get banned from Blue Sky for posting it. And then the third one is
new rule: Barbie is a shiksa.
And after he says that, you hear Jesse Ventura go,
"That's a shiksa."
I didn't catch that.
And Bill Maher looks at him stunned. He's stunned, and he's like, it's a Christian woman. And then he goes, boy, you are from Minnesota. And Jesse Ventura's like, well, you got to ask these things or you'll never know. Like, you can wait until after the show to ask this question, or you can just let the bit play out and maybe find out through that. Then this new rule is about Saudi Arabia banning Barbie, calling it a Jewish doll. And do you have any thoughts on this particular new rule, Sam? If you don't remember, it's okay, because I have some thoughts.
Fuck. I'm sad and done.
Yeah, so this is like the one, it's like, it's almost as if he realized like, whoa, wow, that last bit actually was fairly anti-Semitic. I'd better now be as Islamophobic as possible, as anti-Arab as possible.
Yeah, that's how he balances out, right? Is to be like...
Yeah, and
I make fun of everybody, and you're like, no, you're like racist towards everybody. That's like the
and so actually this bit also. So I'm going to say this is where he sneaks in a little misogyny.
Cringe. There's no other word for it. This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
Where he starts off by talking about how Barbie, it's something about how Jewish women just lay there in bed. Like, he essentially accuses all Jewish women of being bad in bed, a thing I have never heard in my entire life. Like, genuinely the kinds of racial stereotype where I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm like completely unfamiliar with this. Not just because I'm from Calgary. I also lived in Toronto for a number of years. So it's like, it's not like I did not have any Jewish friends in 2003 through 2008 is when I moved down here. Like, I would have heard this if this was a common stereotype.
Some of his references feel like they're literally from the 50s. Like he was reading like a men's magazine in 1952 somehow.
Yeah,
and
or like
what he's pulling from.
I mean, I was going to say, it's like, I wonder if he's just like thinking of something his dad said about his mother to him when he was drunk.
That's how it feels.
But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure his mother is, oh no, I think she is. Let me confirm this real quick.
This does feel important.
His mother, Julie Marnay Berman. Yes, his father was the Roman Catholic. So yes, I now am wondering if maybe this is just something his father, while drunk,
overshared. Yeah.
was like, never marry a Jew. They just lay there during bed. And it like traumatized him so bad that now 40 years later, he's inflicting it on his audience.
After his like baseball game, he was terrible at.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you were just like your mother during sex out there, just laying down in the grass.
Field doing nothing.
Oh, and then, but then he transitions into anti-Arab racism, and he's like, oh, all this technology you're using, because there's a new Bin Laden tape. He's like, it was all invented by the West. And he says something like, none of this was invented by a guy named Abu, which Jesse Ventura laughs and goes, that's true. Again, like the dumbest guy on earth. And then he says something essentially just saying like, no Muslim or Arab has ever invented anything. Is the sort of final punchline. And it's like, oh yeah, people were so racist back then, they couldn't even like, they wouldn't even let them have like algebra or the like foundations of math from the 800s.
Like, the crazy thing is in 21 years, Bill Maher's like still thinks this shit and says it all the time.
Yeah. Like, yeah, he is still doing the kinds of racism that was normal to do on television literally 2 years after 9/11.
And worse, he is like more Islamophobic now.
Yeah, I smacked my lips. I did a Mar. So then, final segment, everybody's favorite, although not this week. So we get to new rules, and he introduces, he's like,
Hey, thank you to this panel because it is time for our new rules as we do every week. All right.
The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't applaud. He sounds dejected about it. This is the
they
most
solemnly nod. It's time.
Prepare the altar. It is time for the new rules. And when you hearing the new rules, you understand his lack of enthusiasm. But so I'll do each new rule and get your thoughts on each one afterwards. So
new rule: get some new hurricane cliches.
Any thoughts on this very confusing new rule?
Yeah. I feel like he accidentally read an internal note to his writers instead of a new rule. Yeah, I think this is the one that the thing that was striking to me here too, just about this hurricane is like, there's no talk of climate change stuff yet. And I know this is about a year before Katrina, which I guess is when people started drawing the comparison between those two things. But, yeah, I don't know. That's not really about the shitty joke he's going to tell, but it did strike me here that just that never comes up.
And they even talk about climate change at the start of the episode, and still there is no link. He loves to link things, and yet
right.
Never
Usually
are they
things that
discussed
should
together.
not be linked well, and then yeah, it was very striking to me, and like it did make me wonder how much of that is just Bill Maher having a shitty show and not being very good at his job, and how much of it was just like maybe that wasn't what people were talking about then as much.
Yeah, I think
I don't really remember. I know people were talking about climate change, but I don't know if they were talking about the connection between like these increasingly catastrophic natural disasters.
That documentary really did give us a solid 10 years of people taking climate change very seriously in this country. It's like pretty remarkable how much influence it had. Although in the movie, he's like, but we don't need to stop eating meat. And it's like, well, hold on. Who's one of the biggest donors in Tennessee politics? I believe it is, I think, Tyson Chicken. That one is just about, he's like, enough on TV with the showing people being like, oh, God must have, somehow God wanted me to survive. And enough with the shots of people buying plywood from Home Hardware. We want to get back to J-Lo and Ben, which is the thing you referenced at the start of how circular this all feels.
Yeah, and just like now the stuff with the people in Appalachia, it's like the same, these fucking idiots brought this on themselves somehow by, living in this place.
All he does is complain about, why do we care about celebrities on the news? He's always complaining about that. And then this week, I guess maybe it's supposed to be ironic, but he seems sincere about the other stuff.
To some measure, but I think he just has contempt for everyone.
I mean, that's it. It's like
the game of the show.
It's like enough with the people thanking God that they survived and showing us them buying plywood to board up their destroyed doors and windows. It's like, what else are people meant to do after a hurricane destroys the place they live in? Like,
yeah.
What else do you think people are doing at a time like that?
New rule. Living in a box for 6 weeks doesn't make you a magician, it makes you homeless.
Classic.
Of course.
Like, I guess that was which magician is he talking about
This was
specifically?
David Blaine
Is this
during his
David
stunt
Blaine?
era.
Okay. Yes. I knew it was one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Also, the other thing too is it's like, yeah, I mean, that's true, but all the magic he did before the box thing is what makes him a magician. He did a lot of magic, did a lot of sleight of hand before the box thing. The third one is...
New rule, one dear to my heart. Lap dancing is a First Amendment right.
Because I guess the city of Los Angeles briefly, I mean, they are not illegal now, but they did outlaw them, I guess, for a period of time. This is the longest new rule by far, surprising no one.
Yeah, he has. He really felt this one, you can tell.
Yeah. Again, this is another one where it's like, okay, I think I see some potential for comedy here, and the execution is like so flat.
I felt the same way about this. Like, I was like, I would love to be able to write a little comedy piece about this premise. Like, I think this is like, even his premise that this is a First Amendment right, I think could potentially be very funny. Unfortunately, it's being delivered by a virulent misogynist, and so it's not. It's like gross and sad and disgusting and disrespectful.
Have any angle. Talk about how like Thomas Jefferson used to grind on Ben Franklin's dick during the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Like,
yeah, I feel like the joke he's making here is because of his prejudices, is that it is absurd to think that a lap dance could be like creative or interesting, or that these people should be treated as like performers. Like, that's the joke to him.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
these people are like engaging in something creative.
Yes.
Which is, yeah, gross and sad.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yes. It's like a mockery of the idea of like, hey, this deserves it. This also deserves dignity that we should extend to all workers.
And yeah, it'll be a tragedy for the men who can't, live this fantasy.
I haven't been to strip clubs a ton of times, but I have seen the few times I've been. So many of them have been so much more talented than Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Is it what they do
mean.
than
It's
at
like,
what he does?
This is you're a performer. You're like bringing thoughtfulness and presence and creativity to it. It's I mean, not always. I'm sure that's not always how people doing lap dances feel about it, but it is a job. You should get like some kudos. It's not unskilled labor, I'll say that.
Yeah, and then the last one is
New rule. Classic rock stations have to play more than 3 songs.
So this is a criticism Emily Heller came up with before, but like she pointed out, a lot of his new rules aren't really rules. Like, they're not phrased like rules. Like, get some new hurricane cliches is not a rule.
Not a rule.
The rule should be something like, the following hurricane cliches are banned.
Right.
A rule, like, I get living in a box for 6 weeks isn't really one. Lap dancing is a First Amendment right. He got that one correct, of course, because he feels so strongly about it. This one also is phrased like a rule. And, sorry, first, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Which one was it? Sorry.
Classic rock stations have to play more than 3 songs.
Yeah, the audience is going nuts for this. So I guess this was a very common problem back in 2003.
We're so far removed from the radio, it's a little hard to remember. Especially since we both probably largely lived in places where you could also get like a good radio station. Like there was a college station or an independent station. Like, I mean, but he lives in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Indy 103 was around for decades.
It's weird. I feel like I'm certainly not the first person to like think about it this way, but like I feel like radio sort of died with my coming of age. And so the idea of like oldies stations doesn't really exist anymore. Like to me, oldie stations always play stuff from the 70s, even
yes.
though that's 60 years ago now or whatever, and not, so like there's no, I don't know, thinking about it in that way of like the references he's making, it's like, I guess oldies radio now would be Blink 182 or something, but like that's not a thing anymore, so I don't have to worry about feeling a million years old.
So this actually became a genuinely contentious issue as radio was dying. The opinion of what is classic rock just referring to old music, or is it itself its own genre? Like classic rock is forever, from Van Halen back to maybe like the Beatles, like the start of the Beatles. Maybe you sneak an Elvis song in there occasionally sometimes, or is it just old music? And this one, you mentioned how the crowd reacted. This one, watching it, I was like, I had this moment where I was like, this would be a perfectly fine second new rule. It's to the point. It's a little punchy. He gets a couple quick things in there, and then
it's a weird closer for sure. It's fine.
Charles Barkley says, and you alluded to this. Charles Barkley, the exact quote is,
I just came on the show for the new rules.
And new rules.
So
proceeds.
Hold on, I forgot to do this last week. Before we get into new rules, you got to do the song with me. The ba 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 ba. Okay, great. So new rules. Any general thoughts on new rules before we get into
my general thoughts on new rules? Biggest bomb of the show is when he says Prince Harry's going to kill a woman.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So yes.
Which is unfortunate because it is a sandwich bomb between two absolute steaming kills.
Oh,
so he fucking murders this new rules.
Yes. So the first one, and as always, I need to once again say this. Emily Heller pointed out most of these are not phrased like rules. Like
no. Some of them are just things that he's going to. Yeah. This should just be called new stand-up premises. That 7 men wrote.
Yeah, this should just be called like a non-topical monologue time.
Yeah, notes app time.
So the first one is, if you find a new record from anyone dead, it sucks.
Yeah.
And that one's a bit soft for the crowd. The crowd's kind of like,
couldn't you see yourself writing for the show? And
I submitted a packet for this show in like 2009. Yeah.
But couldn't you sell like episodes where you're like, nothing's cooking? Wouldn't you just be like, I'm just going to take some stand-up premises that didn't really work out and I'm going to fucking recycle them on this show? Like I would 1000% do that.
Yeah, because I think I remember one of the new rules I submitted was if you are what you eat, you also are what your car is shaped like. And then there was like a specific BMW that was shaped like a dick, and I wanted that to be the graphic. Oh, so here's the thing I noticed about new rules. Listen, another classic last episode of the season, the graphic for the first new rule is the graphic for the second new rule. It doesn't change. They put the wrong one up and then just left it up.
Not a lot of money, this show. This show doesn't have a band. This show is very cheaply made.
Yeah, when people are like, how is it still on? It's just like, I think all the money goes to him. Like whatever the budget is, it's like half to him.
Yeah, it's just the staff and Bill, and they don't have to pay anyone. Like all the guests are free. It's like,
yeah, how much studio space is there really? So the second one, new rule, using the phrase, he's back, is over.
Yeah.
And this is he's like, newspaper headlines. Oh, Nixon, he's back. Like
let's go back to the punchline of people releasing records after they're dead.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you want to. Yes.
The punchline to that is they would have released it while they were alive so they could get blown murders, and Charles loves it.
Oh yes. Famously, Charles loves a blowjob.
Well, can I pull this up? This is one of my favorite Charles Barkley things. Is Charles Barkley? Okay, so I have it right here. This is from TMZ in 2008 when Charles Barkley was busted in Arizona for a DUI. He had told cops he ran the stop sign because he was in a hurry to get some oral sex. According to the officer who wrote the report, quote, he told me that he ran the stop sign because he was in a hurry to pick up the girl I saw get in the passenger seat. The officer continues, he asked me to admit that she was hot. He asked me, you want the truth? When I told him I did, he said, I was going to drive around the corner and get a blowjob. He then explained that she had given him a blowjob 1 week earlier, and it was the best one he ever had in his life. The report says when Barkley was taken to the station, he told one of the employees, "I'll tattoo my name on your ass," if it helped him get out of the DUI. He laughed and then quickly corrected himself and said, "I'll tattoo your name on my ass," and then laughed again. Incredible.
Oh, I didn't.
Is there a more likable man on the planet?
Even getting a DUI, you're like, God, he's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, the second one was the reference to, I didn't know referencing poltergeist in newspaper headlines was a big thing. I guess it was back then.
I guess so.
Yes. So the third one is the one you referenced, which is new rule. Prince Harry is going to hurt someone. And what's crazy is when he first starts, when he's like, his mom is dead. His dad is dating rotting tree bark or something like that.
And the crowd goes nuts.
His brother's going to be king someday and he's got nothing to do. And the crowd is so pumped for this premise. Yeah. And then he says,
"Arrest him before he kills a woman."
And the crowd is like, ha ha. Oh.
Yeah, really loses the crowd. But all the good faith, they are back for the next joke. But, there's a swing and a miss. You try to go edgy, but, sometimes it doesn't work out.
That's like I did a show in Aspen one time, and I had a joke about being suicidal that would always kill. And the set in Aspen was going great. I do the joke about being suicidal. I do that stuff really quiet. The rest of my set, really great. I walk off stage and go right up to the stage manager. I go, a lot of suicides here in Aspen? She's like, oh, yeah, a lot of suicides in Aspen.
Well, it's funny, too, because at this point in Bill's career, or I feel like this is always in Bill's career, but the audience is much more liberal than he is. So he does try to go places, but the crowd is like, because when the guests on the panel are saying really progressive, like really liberal things, are all about it.
Yes.
And then Bill is kind of like the devil's advocate of the crowd as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too is he's not good at being edgy either. Like this thing, it's like yeah, you can do this kind of like insane tonal shift for your punchline in a joke, but like you have to do it correctly. And here it's sort of like so sudden that the crowd is also just kind of like, "Oh God." Like arrest him before he murders a woman isn't like a very like humorous way of phrasing this. And earlier he's being like silly with like dating a woman who looks like rotted tree bark. Like there's like silliness and like comedic exaggerations. And then he just ends it by being like, he will kill his wife someday. And it's like, whoa, whoa, okay.
All right, what's next?
Okay, new rule. Stop saying that athletes do it for the love of the game.
Smashes.
Yes, and this one he's like
looks over at Charles. Charles is going crazy.
Yeah, and this one he's like they do it for the money. They do it so they can have a 36-foot fish tank with a shark in it. Barkley goes nuts at that. It cuts to Barkley with like his head down, shaking,
losing his mind.
So I think that's clearly based on probably a real NBA player. Yeah. And it's funny because this is one of those new rules where I'm like, I fundamentally disagree with the premise because I think almost everybody in the NBA, any professional athlete also loves it and is also insanely gifted. But like when he says, if the NBA paid minimum wage, Shaquille O'Neal would be a bouncer at Scores. Like this is one where I was like, I disagree with the premise, but I have to admit the fundamentals of the joke writing are good on this one. And listen, if Charles Barkley loves it, who am I to protest?
The whole panel's giving it applause. They're going fucking wild.
Yeah. Michael Moore goes nuts for. I think this next one. He's like, the new rule: the news networks must update their stock footage. And I gotta say, this new rule, this is the first one, the whole run. I think this was a great new rule.
New rule: the news networks must update their stock footage. Are you ready for the evening news, everybody? Hussein shooting off his rifle. Osama with his finger up, money being printed, that machine that sorts cigarettes. Terrorists on the monkey bars, money being printed, Osama shooting his rifle. The F-14 taking off, obese people in America, and monkey bars. I'm Dan Rather in New York. Good night.
Wow.
Because it's tight. It dials things up quickly. It's got he knows it. It's like he's saying a lot of examples of like the same stock footage over and over. It's constructed well in that it repeats. Like there are a few types of stock footage. He repeats one of them at the end to close it out. It's like incredibly structurally good joke writing. He delivers it perfectly. He goes through it at like a really quick speed. He doesn't fumble any of his words, which he's very prone to do. At the end, I was like, that's a good one.
What's funny about this bit is that the thing that he's making fun of is literally the title screen of his show. It's the opening screen of this show is fucking literally Hitler, like old Heiling Hitler,
old
and
stock
like
footage, the atomic
stock
bomb
footage
being
of
detonated
the like Vietnam, and it's like he's making fun of literally the opening of his show, but killer bit.
And this is a classic example of a thing I've said before, where it's like, this is the kind of thing to me, I'm like, who cares? But when if the bit is good enough, you don't care that you don't care. If a joke is good enough, the thought of like they need to update their stock footage, I don't give a fuck. Like who's bothered by that? But the bit's done, and you're like, great bit. That was a great joke. It doesn't even occur to you that you're like, I don't fucking give a shit. And then the last one is new rule: lay off California.
And I'm so excited to talk to you about this because you got to be lying, Will, if you look me in the eyes and say that you didn't get a little bit patriotic about California during this bit.
No, but
this is the exact same type of shit that you talk about all the time.
No, so
you love LA. You love California.
The tone of it, the central premise of it is something I've said, but he has never learned about California or Los Angeles. He doesn't really know a lot about it. Like there's one episode there's an interview and it's like, where would you take a guest for breakfast? And it's like or brunch, some famous restaurant for rich people. Where would you take them for dinner and drinks? Some famous restaurant only for rich people. And it's like, where would you take them? What's the touristy thing you'd take them to? And he's like, Venice Beach. And it's like, do you live here? Like,
I take someone to Venice Beach in LA.
But there's other things you would come up with first than maybe the most famous thing to take them to.
Venice Beach is top 5 things to do in LA.
Look, it's great, but also the thing you'd be like, I'd take them to Venice Beach so they can see the bootleg Bart merchandise. Like, I'd take them to Venice Beach so they can
Venice Beach is fun.
So they can see all the T-shirts with SpongeBob smoking weed.
I disagree.
You'd have more details.
When people were coming to LA, I'd always say go to Venice Beach. It's a good time.
You'd have details about why Venice Beach is great. You wouldn't just be like, Venice Beach, it's great. Because it also is like, one of the things that's great about Venice is that it is insanely dirty. It's like one of the grubbiest places in America, which is why it's funny. There will be people who will like write letters to the editor and stuff, and they'll be like, oh, the Democratic administration in Los Angeles is turning Venice Beach into a toilet. And it's like, turning it into a toilet? Buddy, people have been pissing and shitting on Venice Beach for at least 60 years now. And that's where I disagree. The things I love about this place, and I've essentially given this exact new rule. I've said it in person, but with the details removed and new details inserted. I will give you that. And as well, I will say this is an incredible thing to end the season on because, like me, he means this shit, and it is like a big pop, like a big passionate new rule that gets a huge pop, and his crowd is mostly like, I think it is like a lot of locals. So it's a great way to end a season. For all the laziness that came before from him, this new rule just like absolutely just like lights everything on fire, except for the part when he goes,
even our washed up actors are allowed to kill one blonde chick.
That part it dips a little, but they're right back with him.
Well, because they're reminded of their beloved Harry killing a
That's
woman.
it. I was wondering when they had that reaction to the Prince Harry punchline. I wonder if in his head he was like, "Oh God, they're gonna hate that murder one blonde chick punchline that's coming up."
Well, but yeah, I agree. It's like for a Bill Maher bit, great, 10 out of 10.
And this is like, I'll say too about the new rules, order wise, perfect order for these, because there are some soft spots, but like you don't even know.
Also, like what you're saying is true. Like you can tell he's actually passionate about this.
Yes.
Maybe he wrote some of it, and it's like fundamentally, like to his core, one of the things we know about Bill Maher is that he thinks everywhere that he doesn't live is a shithole. So he is just like making fun of like Scranton, and like he has a joke about like East Coast rappers shooting musicians from like Missouri or something.
Branson. Yeah, that joke's a little out of date by the time 2003 rolled around. Like Big Boy was not shooting anybody. Yes, and then that's the end. It's a big round.